The most successful guys, they're all in really good shape. Those things are connected. If I really was living the way I was, I wouldn't be able to complete a tour like I did.
Or if your belief is that the only way that you can raise men up is by putting women down, that doesn't sound like a very noble masculine thing to do. Like, how are you going to call yourself a real man by standing on the shoulders of women that you've mistreated?
So, I mean, I was on anabolic steroids and ran cycles for 9 years. I tried a pretty big cycle. It was the biggest cycle of my life going into that meet. So 1.5 grams of test, right?
You are a fighter that probably gets some of the most steroid accusations because you're built like a bodybuilder.
Always.
This is the sus stuff that you were warning me about before we got started. This is why people on the internet believe that you and Nsima have a closet that you need to come out of.
If you're a guy, it's not attractive to be emotionally volatile. And it's not safe, as we've learned from Dana White and other people.
So we don't really have a weight loss issue here in the United States because they did do it. They showed that they could do it, but then it was hard to maintain because people have the wrong idea about nutrition and probably about fitness.
Tom Segura.
What do you do about, like, you know, your former fat guy self? Like, what do you do about, like, cravings, and how have you navigated that? It does seem like you still enjoy a lot of stuff. Seems like you enjoy stuff with your family. It seems like you enjoy stuff on the road because you are traveling to some places that maybe other people don't get an opportunity to go to.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you're a little bit like me in the sense of, like, I'm going to travel somewhere and they're known for something, I'm going to fucking eat that thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like, I'm like careful of like how I say this to people. It's like, I don't think it's a good idea to start off with like if you're like just beginning, like I need to get healthy, I need to lose weight, to give yourself a bunch of permissions.
Yeah, no gray zones, no gray.
Yeah, to like allow yourself to indulge in all these things. If you're like, I've been unhealthy, I'm trying to, you know what I mean? So it's like I feel like I've been like kind of in the, like going after this now for a minute, for a little while. So basically what I do is I've learned a lot of little things. Like I've learned that one of the things that is fully possible is like, if you have some crazy dessert that like I can try it, like have a bite and be like, that was good.
That's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, but I never thought like that.
Me neither.
I never thought like that. I really didn't. I always thought that like, well, I have to eat this entire fucking thing. Like it feels crazy to say, but like a lot of things I just go like, oh yeah. Like, and guess what? Like, that's not going to ruin your physique or your mind or anything. Like, but it's really hard, I think, when you're at the beginning of that to be like, yeah, just try it. Like people who are not used to that, it's hard to do. It's hard to go have one when someone's used to like having 7. So I do think, and I think we actually talked about this a couple of years ago, where it was like, just don't do that to start. Like don't allow yourself this great.
Snack.
Yeah, don't be a baby. Yeah. And I mean, I said that, by the way, on a podcast. I was like, oh, Mark Bell said this thing. And people were like, the fuck are you talking about? Like, I was like, because Mark was like, you know who needs snacks? Like children. And so I told people that, and people flooded me with like, I have snacks. What the fuck are you talking about? Like we're allowed to snack. And I was like, but here's the thing. I know what you meant. I know what you meant. And people who understood it know what I mean. It's you know what I mean? It's people will always hear what they want to hear, see what they want to see. You know, the call always comes from inside the house. So it's like, you can say something to somebody, they spin it, and you're just like, enjoy yourself. I'm not gonna fucking debate you on this whole thing. Like, what you're saying is like, you don't have to indulge every time you feel like, I need something to eat right now, okay? So somebody who can't wrap their head around that concept, I'm not gonna spend time explaining it to, you know?
Hey, you're not gonna DM him back forever?
Yo, snacks are hard though, dude, because like, even me, like, I used to just have food around all the time, and then when I stopped doing that, I got mad.
Yeah.
You get a little cranky when you don't have your little snacky poo, man.
Yeah, you do. Yeah.
It's tough.
It's a change. But I mean, look, I think you end up finding things that like, I don't know, like I remember seeing this on like a show one time and being like, this fucking Momo doesn't, like, talking about, this guy was like yogurt and blueberries. This is like 10 years ago. He's like, yogurt and blueberries, you fucking tool. It's like, I eat it every day. And I love a yogurt. I do. I fucking love
Yeah,
it.
you have like a palate for it now.
I do. And it's like this one yogurt, it's like 17, 18 grams of protein. Blueberries like have like this really great, it's like a superfood, whatever, like, and it balances out like the palate from like the kind of the
Yogurt taste.
the yogurt taste. Like it adds this like a little bit of, it's not too sweet, but I have it all the time. I like it. Figuring out those little things like, and then I'll have an indulgence. Had that amazing burger that I told you guys to go to. But it's like, I had it and I don't know, I'm not going to have it for a while. You know what I mean? Like the real slippery slope for people, I think, like myself included, is if I'm like, that was great. I'm going to take you guys right now. And then tomorrow I'm going to take you start like just overdoing stuff, which is like, that's pretty much the definition of being overweight, is that you are overeating. You're calorically in a surplus. So I think once you learn to like navigate the path, you go like, all right, I'm going to have this indulgence, but I'm not going to do this all the time. I'm going to do it this week, and maybe I'll do it again next month. Like that. That is something you can do, but like we originally talked about, I don't think it's a good place to start at if you're like, I'm really struggling with food.
Yeah, we had a guy on the show years ago, or not too long ago, that said you can only break the rules when you know them.
It's a great point.
And then same thing with comedy, right? Chappelle can go up there and just like do whatever because he understands the rules so well.
He's fucking unbelievable, dude. He can do things that I've never seen. I remember he went up at this arena, and like arenas are just so different. Like, you're used to seeing comedy performed in clubs, and that's really how it's designed for. It's an intimate art form. He can do like quiet, soft-spoken storytelling, like he's telling you, it's like it's you three at the table, and then you look up and there's like 18,000 people, and he was doing this with like, his special had just come out, so he had no new material. So most people, like, when you have no new material, you go, keep me in the small clubs to figure stuff out so that I can take it to the big room. It's the natural way. He was like, no, just do the arena. So he worked out stuff with 18,000 people. And it was like, and the thing is, like, he's so just gifted as a orator, like somebody that can just talk, that they were just like, that was incredible. And you're like, yeah, that's the first time he said that. Like, that wasn't even, it's just, yeah.
Another thing I think in terms of food, what I think could be important for a lot of people, and it sounds like such, I don't know, sounds like a little over-the-top fitness advice, but just go to fucking bed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you're done with your set, go to your room. If you need to eat something because you're actually hungry, like maybe it's something that's healthy, but go to bed.
This has happened to me countless. This was the other night. Because, I mean, I don't want it to sound like I'm not coming for saying any of this stuff from like, I have this all figured out. This is like always a work in progress thing. But it was just like the other night, I got home on the not Golden Tiger night, and it was like, everyone was asleep. I was like, it's like, I don't know, it was like 11:30 or something. I'm gonna get something to eat. I started like walking to the kitchen, and I just kind of stopped, like literally in like the middle of the hallway, and I was like, I'm not hungry. Like, I just stopped. I go, I'm not hungry right now. I just want to taste something. You know what I mean? Like, I was
it's
like,
not going to be good.
I go, it's not. I mean, I didn't think
probably.
I was going to go for like something even crazy indulgent, but I was just like, why eat anything right now? I was like, can I go to bed right now without eating? And I literally had like the conversation in my head, standing in the hall, and then I was like, yeah, just turn around, go to, it was like a waste. It was going to be just wasteful eating. there was no purpose to it other than like spending time doing it. I was like, just go. Like, if my stomach was groaning, I would have been like, oh, you're really hungry, there's hunger pain. But I was like, just go to bed.
If no one else is awake and no one sees it, the calories don't count.
That's true.
Right?
Yeah,
they don't count against
the
you.
other one, and this is super obvious, but I mean, I've told so many friends this. Like, you'd be really surprised that you will not eat what you don't have in the house. Like if you're like, man, I keep eating these fucking chocolate bars. You're like, yeah, it's crazy is if you don't buy them, you won't eat them.
People are like, well, my kids. And it's like, your 7-year-old kid drives to the store and buys granola bars.
Well, yeah, because the funny thing is with my kids are snack hounds, they're just monsters. You'll see how it goes. What happens is they go, I want the granola. And you're like, we don't have it. And they're like, all right, what else do we have? Like, they just go right to the next thing.
Right.
They'll eat what is available. Yeah.
With all like the habits that you've changed so far at this point, because like something that we've mentioned before is a lot of people almost become, they feel like they become different people as they change and as they change their habits. But like you've been a successful comedian for a very long time. You've been doing business at a very high level for a long time. And recently, maybe the past 3 or 4 years, you really changed your shape. Like you look younger now than you did 10 years ago.
Crazy.
So I'm curious, like, did your skill and other things, the way you do business, the way you do comedy, did that change at all? Or is it just like you're in better shape and that's the big deal?
I do think it all has like a domino effect. I've heard people say they're like discipline in one facet of your life will bleed in to other parts of your life.
But you were already super disciplined in comedy.
I was disciplined in that. So I do feel like it kind of connects things more. You kind of develop more skills. You become more focused because you're not allowing. Because it was basically like do these things and then let this thing slide by. So now you're like, don't let that slide by. And what happens is you go, I'm not going to let that slide by, and it makes you look around at anything else. So you start being a little more. You tighten everything else, up. And it I think you do become like sharper at your business stuff because, when you look at, I've talked about this even before I was even doing anything to take care of myself health-wise. It's like the most successful guys in like entertainment, let's say like movies, they're all in really good shape. And I don't mean that they're in good shape and that's why because their bodies need, but like Kevin Hart, is like he's a fitness lunatic.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mark Wahlberg, same thing. The Rock, same thing. Cruise, he's in great shape. All those guys are like very disciplined with their health, and then they are also like really on top of all their business stuff. Like they all have multiple businesses that they work with. They have like different, whether it's like car stuff, gym stuff. They work with banks and shoe sponsors, like they have all these other things going on, and like their physical health is a huge priority. Yeah. So I think those things are connected. It's not just this is randomly happening. Mm-hmm. It's like I think it's all tied together. So yeah, I think if like you're doing what I do, also like the truth is like if I really was living the way I was physically 10 years ago, I wouldn't be able to complete a tour like I did. You literally cannot complete.
How many dates was it?
We did 303 shows in 171 cities.
In 1 year? And in how long?
21 months. So, but I mean, there's a lot of a lot of movement, a lot of movement. Like there was a few times where we did, I think it was on average, there's 30 days in a month where we did like 24 to 26 shows in a month. And that was on average, a city every other day. So you think about like the amount of travel. If you're really like, I don't lift, I don't eat well, and I don't move. I mean, I got sick on that tour probably 6-7 times. Mm-hmm. And that was with being on top of stuff. And like I told you, like not really drinking, because your body is like breaking down from like and then the stress of performing, and then you do 2 shows in a night sometimes. So you're like, you're wrapping up at like 1 a.m. and you're on a bus and you sleep like shit on the bus. And you get to the next city, it's 5 a.m, you check in. Like, so that wear and tear, if you're not taking care of yourself at all, I mean, you just completely fall apart.
Chris Williamson.
as you've gotten older, what I've found is that I've been able to become more vulnerable with my friendships with these two and with other male friends I have in my life, because I know that in my mid-20s, let's say I was in a relationship or something and shit would be going down. Shit would be horrible. Buddy asks, hey man, how's shit going with... Things are good, right? And I've found that like over time, I don't know why I've become more comfortable being vulnerable. Maybe it's talking with y'all, but that has been so beneficial to my friendships, to my life overall. And I just wish I was able to, I was comfortable enough being more vulnerable in my 20s or mid 20s. When do you think, or what do you think has allowed you to become more vulnerable as a individual with your audience and also your friends and people in your life?
Self-confidence, I think, and the belief that I'm not inherently flawed as a person. Lots of people, right? So the difference between your experience of yourself and your experience of everybody else is like 1,000,000 to 1 in terms of resolution. Okay. So all that I know about you, even though we've spent the last day pretty much together and trained and been to sauna and all the rest of it, all that I've got to see is what you've done in terms of body language and what you've said, right? And all that is a squeezed, rough resolution version of what you meant to say. And all that is a selection of the things that you thought that you could have said, right? But what you've got to experience is 1,000,000 times a second, all of the different vacillations between the promise you made yourself about breakfast this morning that you broke, and that idea that you could have said but you didn't say accurately, and the thought that you've forgotten about, everything. And because of that, it leads us to believe that we are inherently more flawed than everybody else. Because from the outside looking in, everybody else looks like they've got it together because they don't vacillate in the same sort of a way. It's like, no. Everybody is failing forward permanently. Everybody is chronically uncertain about the decisions that they make and all the rest of it. And it takes time to realize, I think, that that's the way that people are designed. And if you get more comfortable over time, you can start to open up. I also think that the sort of machismo, men don't have problems thing falls away pretty quickly, because you're like, fuck, dude, who are you kidding? Like, and we've got great role models, people like Cam Haines, Goggins, who open up about brutal abuse and, you know, frankly, pretty embarrassing things. Goggins brought, in the audio version of Never Finished, he brings his mum on for 45 minutes to hear her speak about how she was going to take her own life when he was 10 or 11 years old. And the only reason that she didn't is because she knew that she would leave David and Trunas Jr. with this tyrant of a father. And he sits and listens to his mother talk about this. And partway through, he says, Mum, do you want to have a break? And she says, no, I'm going to keep going. I was like, fuck, that's some Goggins genetics in that you can see that she's got a dog in her as well. And, you know, if you have a role model like that, like, who the fuck am I to say that I shouldn't be able to open up about being bullied as a kid in school? You know, like I wasn't locked in a furnace and whipped with a belt like Goggins' dad was. Like, you know, it gives me bravery to go out and talk about stuff like that. So I think that's part of it. And just growing up, man, and realizing that life is richer when you open up to people. And I fundamentally disagree with people that say, if you're vulnerable to those around you, they'll use it against you.
How about opening up to a woman? How do you feel about that? Just because the reason why I ask you that is, you know, red pill ideology, men who are talking about opening up to women on that end of things, they believe that if you do that, well, your woman will see you as weak and she'll leave you.
Never show your vulnerability to a woman is one of the rules. So I think that it's very dependent on the sort of woman that you get with. And I think that if you are hypothetically living in a city, let's say like Miami, where there are lots of supercars and lots of tequila and everybody wears red bottom lubes and everyone's got a $100,000 Rolex or whatever, the kind of values that the women who are around those sorts of men will be looking for will not be conducive to you opening up. Conversely, relationships that are a little bit more balanced with a woman who is sufficiently growth-minded that she doesn't see vulnerability as a weakness but as a strength can be perceived in a different way. This is not for me to say that maybe it's even more than 50% of women get turned off by vulnerability, but it's not like 90% of women. There is a huge cohort of women out there who want to be able to support a strong, competent man in times when he is no longer able to be strong and competent. Think about it this way. Why is it that the high-powered lawyer CEO guy wants to be tied up and choked and spanked by his missus on a nighttime. The reason is that when you have polarity in a relationship, the push and pull, there's something exciting about that. No one, the wife typically, or else no one would do it for more than 2 times and the relationship would break down, doesn't look at the husband and think that he's less of a man because that's something that he wants. What she sees is an additional level of commitment from him. This isn't me like advocating it. This isn't my secret bite. This isn't me like revealing my sexual preference here. The reason that it happens, or you could reverse it, like the boss bitch high-powered CEO woman wanting that to be a sub when it comes to the bedroom, the reason for that is because the polarity is exciting and interesting. And I think that the same thing goes for, you know, I mean, fucking Goggins. If David Goggins, widely regarded as one of the hardest men on the planet, can open up about all of the stuff that's happened to him and yet still go out and crush whatever challenge is put in front of him, you go, okay, is he less of a man or more of a man for doing that? But yeah, don't get me wrong. If you open up to the wrong woman, they will not be able to accept, they will see it as some sort of a flaw or a weakness. But, you know, some men don't have that either access to vulnerability, or maybe some of them simply aren't vulnerable. You know, there are absolute, just straight up testosterone fueled mammoths out there who don't stop, who don't have that introspection, who don't have that self-concern. Dude, I've got a group of perfect women for you, and most of them might seem to be in Miami. But I don't know. I think if you are the kind of guy that is going to work incredibly hard and then have periods where you go, fuck, like I really don't know if this is worth it. Like today was hard, today was tough. You need to find a partner that's going to accept that. If you don't have a partner, like the girl that I'm with, if I have a bad day or if I have a concern, she is happy to lean into that and be like beyond supportive. Like she will ask me questions, she will give me prompts, she will be, and I'm pretty sure that it's like, I'm probably as attractive, if not more attractive in those moments than I am when I'm out like crushing it on a podcast.
How would somebody know if they're with the wrong person, do you think?
Oh God. I mean, that's a
big one.
Yeah.
What are some red flags that maybe you've experienced or seen? Because I'm sure you get a lot of questions on relationships and stuff like that.
Yeah. So I think that you need to have fundamental value alignment. You know, for instance, if you and your partner fundamentally disagree on how to raise children,
or even to have a kid,
or I mean, fucking hell, yeah. I mean, that's very, very dangerous. Just other things as well, though, like not to get political, but like your view of the world is actually pretty informed by your politics, right? Like if your partner is super pro-life and you're super pro-choice, if you are incredibly pro-immigration and your partner is anti, if you're very pro-free speech and they're not, if they're pro-gun and you're not, like there's going to be some conflict in there because it's not just about that one issue, it's about what feeds into that belief, right? This isn't for me to say, oh, you need to have assortative mating where you only date within your own political party, but you need to have some shit in common, right? You need to have some common interests. You need to be able to go and train together. If you like training, get a partner that you can train with, because then you can actually enjoy the thing that you enjoy with them. Like that's a pretty good idea. In terms of red flags, I think the most important things to get right are, and this is for both guys and girls, is your partner psychologically stable? And what that means is after any incident that takes them off center in terms of their mood, how quickly do they return to baseline? And you want it to be within 6 to 12 hours at most. You want them to be able to deal with some stress, some disagreement, some argument or whatever it is, and within a not forever amount of time, get back to baseline. I have some friends for whom them and their partners will have an argument and they're both blocked on every social media and every messaging app for like 2 weeks. And they're like having to email each other or do whatever it is. And you go, dude, that is...
I've dealt with that.
That is not...
Not in my current relationship. Babe, I love you.
So that would be one. Having a growth mindset would be another one. So somebody that is prepared to grow and can believe in change both for you, for themselves, and in the relationship as well. We were talking in the sauna last night about the Michelangelo effect. So this is an effect whereby people in a relationship begin to form themselves into a more and more optimized, idealized version of what their partner wants. So you could imagine...
Become more and more attractive.
Correct, yes. Or open or appropriate for them, right? You, if you are committed, will begin to forge yourself into some sort of amalgamation of who you are truly and who your partner wants you to be. And if your partner is well balanced and has a great perspective in the world, they want you to be a better version of you. They don't want you to be less you, they want you to be more you, and they can direct you in that way. So having the growth mindset is super important. The reason is that if you do encounter challenges, so at the moment my relationship is long distance, like we've been able to get past that because both of us believe that there are solutions that we can work around. Like that's important, right? The final one that I would probably say would be conscientiousness, and that is because all of this, whether it be the growth mindset, whether it be the psychological stability, being conscientious allows you to sort of deploy grind and grit and motivation in an effective manner. And it seems that this bears out in the data as well. Seth Stevens-Davidowitz wrote a great book called Don't Trust Your Gut, and he's a data scientist that applied it to use big data to answer like 12 of life's biggest questions. What's the most attractive way for me to look? Who should I marry? What job should I take if I want to become a millionaire the quickest? How do I become more lucky? How do I raise a child to have good outcomes in life? All the way down. And the interesting shit to do with dating was psychological stability, growth mindset, conscientiousness. You have those big three, pretty much everything else will get sorted out.
Mark, I'm kind of curious about this from you, and it's kind of within this. As far as like you in your relationship, as it's been a long time, you haven't been dating for a minute, but have you
went on a date last night
with your wife?
Right.
You guys been in a relationship for what, more than 2 decades now? Yeah. Have you always been comfortable being vulnerable with Andy, your wife?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think, you know, there was, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I was like fully exposed, like when we met, you know, I didn't have anything. So there was like, I didn't have really a lot to be proud of other than like my, I guess like lifting and stuff like that. So I didn't have a license. I didn't have a bank account. I didn't have a car. I just didn't have anything. So there was like, I couldn't even like not be vulnerable. I needed a motherfucking ride. You know what I mean? Like, so yeah, I was just the way that I was. There wasn't like, I couldn't sugarcoat or hide anything. I didn't have much of my shit together. So.
That's a powerful foundation to build upon though, right? Because you've already pre-selected for the sort of woman that's going to be prepared to grow with you. You know, like if you were to think, how much do you have to beat the odds by to go from that guy to this guy?
Right.
You know, every single day beating the odds financially, developmentally, psychologically, spiritually. And that is one of the beautiful things about relationships that last for a long time. And that's one of the things that you don't get if you do have transient transactional relationships that you cycle in and out of every couple of weeks. If you're a guy that's just blowing through girls, you're never going to actually be able to grow with any one girl. You're never going to be able to find someone that can make you better. Now, again, the red pill ideology would be, why the fuck would you want to be friends with a girl? Right? Like they don't basically bring anything to your life. And, you know, there are some things.
Not really that funny.
I'm glad that we got the racism in early, but ahead of the sexism. That's cool. I really wanted to get that done first.
There we go.
If you, there are certain things that women are very competent at that men aren't, right? Their psychological insight, their ability to use emotions is way, way, way better than men's. Now, they can't throw for shit. Like, they are really, really bad at throwing. However, I don't need them to throw. I need them to use their emotional insight, right? Like that, they are really, really good at that. Maybe you can find your boys and stitch them together in a good enough group where they can be a solution for that. But I don't know. I think that there's something beautiful about being able to grow with someone. And again, everything is up for grabs now. You know, the grand narratives that held previous relationships together, everything is up for debate. Should you stick together in a relationship forever, or should you just be this sort of polygynous, super turbo Chad man that, you know, just dominates Miami's nightlife scene? Like, you know, pick your route, Western man.
Yeah. You know, when paying attention to your content, we were talking a little bit about this yesterday. A lot of your content is reaching men, young men. And it seems that your content is helping men to become better, but it is not at the expense of women. It is not making all women look a certain way. And I've gone down the red pill rabbit hole just to learn about it. And as we've mentioned, it says women are like this, and this is why. This is why you can't trust them. This is why you need to be careful. This is why you need to play the game. Like you mentioned, it's adversarial. So what do you think that men should be focusing on if their goal is to be in a good monogamous relationship? Because one thing I do notice is that a lot of the focus of this red pill ideology is on the lack of good from women, and like the where they're falling short as far as relationships are concerned.
It's very easy in the world of dating dynamics to point the finger at women. And the reason for that is that hypergamy, which is this tendency that women have to date up and across, women on average want to date a man who is taller, better educated, and wealthier than they are, right? Or at least as on all of those. Men don't have that the same. They'll date what's called across and down. Women will date across and up. Now, the thing is, it's very easy to point at the preferences of women and say, see, like this, you have no, do you remember Kevin Samuels? Do you remember that guy?
Yes.
Yeah, so Kevin Samuels sadly passed away halfway through last year, and say what you want about him, the guy was a great communicator and he really did have style. He basically made a career out of live streaming with girls and telling them that their perception of mate value was skewed. It's like, what would you want from your partner? They would say, I want him to be 6'1", earn 200 grand a year, and do this sort of a thing. And you'd go, okay, like, can you cook? Can you clean? What's your dress size? Like, how many guys have you been with, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you'd say, look, you're skewed. Your hypergamy is showing, basically. And it's very easy to point that out. No one ever turns the finger around at men within the manosphere space and says, okay, so women's preference is for men that are better resourced, more statusful than they are. Men's preference is for women that are younger than they are. No one ever turns it around and goes, guys, have you ever considered dating older? Well, no. Like, that's, young, fertile women, like, use them and lose them. Like, that's the way that you go. And you go, oh, okay, so what you're saying is that women need to readjust their biologically predisposed preference for men that have greater status and resources than them. But your biological predisposition for women that are younger and more fertile than you, that's locked in. That shouldn't be changed, but theirs should. Like, that's an asymmetry, and it's the exact same fucking conversation. So talking to men and teaching them that women are the enemy is not going to make for a good society, as far as I'm concerned. And if the only way that you can raise men up, or if your belief is that the only way that you can raise men up is by putting women down, that doesn't sound like a very noble masculine thing to do. Like, how are you going to call yourself a real man by standing on the shoulders of women that you've mistreated? That's not a particularly virtuous approach to life for me. And this is why, if you look at the conversations I have on the show about evolutionary psychology, at least 50% of the researchers are women. Tons and tons and tons of the women in this space are fantastic researchers. And they can give insights around women's mating preferences that men can't have. And for every single person on the internet that says, don't ask a fish about how to fish, fuck off. Like, you are not doing any of the research that these girls are, right? These are highly trained PhD and above that level researchers doing cutting edge evolutionary psychology, anthropology, social sciences research. And they are finding out stuff to do with mating preferences, wrapping that in and folding it into an ancestral lifestyle and coming out with really, really fucking interesting insights. For some red pill bro on the internet to go, oh, don't ask a fish about how to fish, man. Like, dude, you cool. There is a corner of the internet for you, and I'm glad that you stay there, basically.
Yo, are those women's sandals?
Hold up. These sandals are rooted in millennia of masculinity. Pretty much all the ancient Greek warriors wore them.
Also, the ancient Aztec warriors used to wear them into battle. They're called cacti.
The Zulu warriors would march hundreds of miles in them.
And so did the Romans. They conquered a bit of land themselves.
That's great to know.
Is that the new Victoria's Secret drop?
Grab your Flex sandal now at powerproject.live.
Luisa Nicola.
What do we see with diet? We've scraped up upon it a little bit, but what about something like a ketogenic diet and its effects on Alzheimer's, dementia, damage of the brain. Do we see any extra benefit with something like that, or is it kind of more just a calorie control thing?
So, such a controversial field. For some reason, like nutrition, people just start attacking you on Instagram. I'm not sure why.
What you say here.
Now, the most widely studied diet for brain health in terms of Alzheimer's disease and mild cognitive impairment is the MIND diet. So that is the Mediterranean, it's like the Mediterranean diet. So it involves all the food groups. Mainly the bulk of it is green leafy vegetables, all different types of vegetables, fish, olive oil, and a little bit of red meat. And what they found was if you just adjusted for nutrition when it comes to Alzheimer's disease, you can lower your risk by 53% just from adjusting one area, which is nutrition. Now, I don't subscribe to any diet. I eat everything. I eat red meat. I love it. I don't think that there is a problem to it. The only time that becomes a problem is when your saturated fat is tipping over to the point of where your LDL is higher than 70. So if you get an LDL higher than 70, then you're quote unquote in that atherosclerotic state. And we know that that's bad because what does that end up doing? It ends up forming these plaques against the arteries of the wall, which stops the blood flow, narrowing. And so we don't want that. So I was talking about this with Max Lugavere, and he's like, but Louisa, it's good for you. And I'm like, just the dose makes the poison.
Yeah.
So you can have, in my opinion, saturated fat is only a problem if you're exceeding the recommended daily intake, which don't ask me what that is because it's different for everybody. So we really need to be monitoring that. We know that green leafy vegetables are fantastic for the brain. Nuts, olive oil is great. Fish, oh my gosh, fish is wonderful. If people think of fish as, EPA, DHA, omega-3 fatty acids, and they're absolutely amazing. I always say that if you should have any two supplements, you should be having creatine and omega-3 fatty acids, in my opinion, Neuroathletics gold standard. But if you put a telescope and shine it on a salmon, you look at it, it's not just EPA, DHA, you've also got B vitamins in there. B vitamins, B12, B6, these are amazing for the brain and for mild cognitive impairment patients. So just stay away from the bad things, really.
What would you say the bad things are?
Sugar.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excessive amounts or just
processed foods.
Okay.
Just things that we know of to be bad. There are certain individuals who are like, it's only plant-based. And I'm like, okay, but whatever you need, you do you. I generally stay away from the things, like I said, the worst things you can do for your brain is eat high saturated fats. There's a huge argument with seed oils.
Yeah.
Oh, seed oils are bad. Have you had Paul
Saladino?
Yeah.
Yeah. We've talked to everybody about seed oils before.
Yeah. And what's your take on it?
They're in processed food, and I don't really eat processed food, so I don't have anything to worry about.
Yeah.
No, but if you go and eat a packet of chips or whatever, you just once, it's not going to kill you. And there's seed oils in there. So like I said, the dose makes the poison.
Yeah.
But if you want a high-performing brain, then generally stay away from these refined sugars, highly processed foods, eating whole grains, whole vegetables. Do you eat meat?
I eat tons of meat.
Yeah.
I think one of the hard things about the seed oil thing, I call it restaurant oil. So it's a little easier for people to understand because I don't even know if I eat seed oil. Well, it's like canola oil and it's in packaged food, but you get it in heavy dosages, probably in the heaviest dosage at a restaurant because they don't even know how to prepare or cook your meat without dumping a bunch of oil on it. And a lot of times here in the United States, the oil that they use, it's allowed to still be called olive oil, but it's like 50-50. So it has both in there. But I don't really know or care a ton about that. I think just trying to manage your body weight, I think is like an easier thing to do. And in terms of sugar and all the different things, I think, you should be mindful of like what it is you're consuming. Like try to go for quality as much as possible. But you also want your life and your day to be at least feeling like rich and feeling like you're doing some of the things that you want to do rather than just always forcing yourself to maybe do some of the things you don't want to do.
Yeah, and also I think we focus a lot on what not to put in our mouths, and we don't focus on what to put in our mouths, such as omega-3. No, there's risk factors for all-cause mortality, and I think they've come up with around 20 risk factors, smoking, etc. We know smoking's bad. It leads to death eventually. One of the risk factors now is a low omega-3 index. So if you are not consuming omega-3 fatty acids, specifically EPA, DHA, and you score, and you go and get a blood test, and it's called omega-3 index, and your score, I think if it's below 8, I want to say, don't quote me on that, but if it's below like 6 or 8, you are on the same path of accelerated all-cause mortality as a smoker. That's how imperative EPA and DHA is. It helps with cell membrane fluidity. It helps with lowering inflammation in the brain and central nervous system. It's just, your brain is made of water and fat. The fat is DHA. You got to be feeding the brain. And so many people are like, does that, I'm feeding the brain cholesterol. The cholesterol, the molecule can't pass through the blood-brain barrier. I don't know what people are talking about when they talk about that. So we've got to be feeding the brain what it's made of.
Yeah. Do you think there's a difference between getting that from supplementation versus getting that from actual fish food?
Well, nowadays, the fish that we're eating, I don't believe is the best. I watched this documentary called Seaspiracy. You've got to watch it. It was really scary and what it's doing to our oceans. Yeah, it's on Netflix. I watched it. What it's doing to our oceans is crazy.
Our fish are swimming around in a big poisonous barrel of soup, basically.
They're giving us, and they're injecting it. Actually, what they said on this documentary, they're injecting salmon with astaxanthin, which gives it the pink flavor. So you'll think, wow, look how fresh this fish looks, but it's just colored. Yeah. So this is why we need to adopt EPA, DHA. This is Seaspiracy here, yeah.
Or try to get wild caught, but we don't really know what the regulations on all that is.
I mean, wild caught. So I spent time in Greece. That's where my family is from in September. And I went there and we stayed on this little island called Castellorizo. And the fishermen were literally going out that day and bringing the fish back. So that was beautiful. That was EPA, DHA rich.
How about if you because I never cook salmon. I always get just sushi grade fish because I like sashimi. So is there a difference? Your face.
I know. I can't believe I just did that. So do you understand?
I hope you had that shit on camera.
I have literal fights. Relationships have been ended because I don't eat sushi, and I'm coming out of the closet with this. I do not eat sushi, and I wish I did. That's a thing. I wish I did.
Wish you were fancier, right?
Yeah, I just wish I wish I liked it because you can go to these different places in New York. It's like $500 just to get. It's ridiculous, but it's God.
Poke as well.
Poke. See, and I don't eat it, and I wish I did because I get judged. People would judge me. They're like, "You don't eat sushi." They're like, "Just try it." And so I don't eat things that are weird. I don't eat custard. I don't eat cream. Weird textures for some reason. So I don't think you're getting more benefits from eating it raw, but you may be. I'm not sure.
I was just wondering because of the quality of the fish. You can only eat a certain type of fish raw. You know what I mean? You can't eat normal Costco sushi. You can't eat that raw.
Well, the best form of DHA in its phospholipid form is in fish eggs, so caviar.
Yeah,
and another thing, I want to like caviar. I see them on little pancakes.
They're so good.
That's going to be I'm just going to force myself.
Have you ever tried it?
Yes. That's how I got to this. That's how I got to this position of not liking it. When you try something
you have to have it with creme fraiche. That's the key. You have it with creme fraiche?
What is creme fraiche?
That's the cream that you have it with. That's on the little tiny pancake thing.
There we go. I don't eat cream because of the texture. It will makes me sick. So
avocado? You don't fuck with avocado?
I fuck with avocado, yeah.
Okay.
But here's the weird thing. I don't eat the inside of tomatoes, but I'll eat the outside, the hard pieces of tomatoes. Again, very hard to date me. Hard person.
I get that. I have the same thing. If once the tomato is inside of a hamburger and it's all soggy,
Yeah.
But I'll take that first initial crispy bite.
But that's my goal this year, to like caviar.
So then no yogurt either?
I eat yogurt, yeah.
Okay, good. All right, got it. Can you have, because will the omega-3s have the EA or DHA in it? or do you have to have that as another supplement as well?
Yeah, so omega-3s are made up of 3 parts, EPA, DHA, and ALA.
Okay.
EPA, DHA comes from fish, often fatty fish such as mackerel, salmon, and sardines. ALA is in its plant form, and this is where you get the vegans coming in. You can get it from microalgae, or you can get it from flax seeds and chia seeds. It's just that you have to have a lot of it to meet the demands of because it has to then translate into the DHA EPA. So, I mean, if you're not allergic to it, maybe just try the EPA DHA. And you can get different forms from different companies in terms of more DHA than EPA. So
if we cut out and cut back on processed foods and we eat relatively healthy, natural foods, that will change our profile of our omega-6 to omega-3 ratio, right?
Yeah. So we have
so maybe you don't have to worry about it too much. And if you get grass-fed beef and things like that, we think that will augment enough or not enough.
But here's the point with the omega-6 and omega-3 ratio. If you're too high in omega-6, you can't even process the omega-3s. So people could be saying, well, I had a bad diet today full of omega-6, so I'm just going to take all of this omega-3. But it actually, you can't, it's not bioavailable if you've got too much omega-6. So you have to really be careful with the amount of food, like you said, that you're putting, and you don't want to throw off that ratio. And it's so easy to throw it off.
But getting rid of processed food will help
that
ratio a ton.
Immensely. So just sticking to a whole food.
So you can bypass all of it potentially without having to take fish oil supplements.
Well, no, you can bypass the omega-6, but the omega-3 fatty acids you have to supplement with because we want to get that omega-3 index up.
Can we get them from eggs? And can we get them from beef, grass-fed beef?
You can get omega-3 fatty acids from a wide variety of foods like eggs, beef, etc. Choline is abundant in eggs, but not to the same amount. And the dosage that you're looking at is 4 grams a day to get these effects. So I usually take 2 grams in the morning and 2 grams at night. So that's 2,000 milligrams of each. So that's a big load to get from foods other than fatty fish.
Yeah. Curious, does you said the brand was Momentous?
Yeah.
Do they have omega-3s? I'm just curious, like in terms of other brands that you may know that are regulated as far as the amount of omega-3s in it?
Yeah, and so they're regulated. They've got, and I know that Thorne has really great omega-3.
Thorne, Thorne?
Yeah.
That brand?
Yeah.
Okay.
And they've got a supplement. They've got a specific one that is high in DHA.
Oh, cool.
So it's like advanced DHA. So you can be getting more DHA, which generally would be given to someone who's had a concussion or somebody who has been, who has gotten Alzheimer's disease or MCI, mild cognitive impairment, which is a pre-dementia state. They should be supplementing profusely with omega-3 fatty acids.
Chris Williamson. Why do you think there's a recent rise against porn and masturbation? Oh, that's super easy. The reason so many people are against porn right now is just because, the thing to do is preach life advice. That is the main thing that people are looking for. People are more terminally online now than ever, more isolated than ever. They don't have real friends. They don't have people to look up to, so they go to, content creators online. So come out against porn. It's decent advice.
I saw you ask Derek about NoFap, and you mentioned the bro science aspect of it.
Talking about bro science, what's your thoughts on NoFap?
It depends what you are doing it for. Are you doing it because you've been told by, I don't know, some incel forum that this is what you got to do? Or are you doing it for dopamine detox thing? Are you doing it in what context? Just in general, what do I think about it?
Yeah, and what are the contexts in which you think it's got some efficacy and which are the ones that you think is pie in the sky?
So what are your thoughts on NoFap and young men? What do you think about that whole genre of stuff?
I recently had a conversation with a guy called Dr. David Lay, he wrote a book called Porn for Dicks, an ethical use for how to fap online, basically. He is very anti-porn panic. He's very pro-masturbation. He says that there's no such thing as sex addiction or porn addiction and that NoFap is total bollocks. So I've got a bit of availability bias here because I've recently spoken to this guy that kind of turned my worldview upside down. I would say on average, it is a good idea to limit your exposure to porn if you can. I think that there is an escalating desire system that goes on where you constantly want ever more extreme types of porn to keep yourself stimulated. If you're a single guy, you're going to not want to go out and find sex if you can satisfy yourself on your own. And if you're in a relationship, you're not going to want to satisfy your partner as much if you can satisfy yourself on your own. This isn't for me to say, like, don't touch your penis. You better not touch your fucking penis.
Touch your penis.
Touch your penis. Don't touch your penis right now. But
right now.
This is the sus stuff that you were warning me about before we get started. This is why people on the internet believe that you and Nsima have a closet that you need to come out of. Because you are instructing people who are listening to a video that you are on to touch their penis.
I leave it up to them to do what they want, Chris.
That sounded like a command to me.
All right now.
While Mark is holding
my phallic symbol,
this luminous
It's hard
rod.
to not touch your penis. Try to make it through just a couple hours. Seriously.
So, limit porn use, I think, is a good idea, right?
Yeah.
Like, generally, it would be good for you to be motivated to go and find physical connection between you and either a new partner or you and your existing partner. Like that doesn't seem like a crazy stat to go after. When it comes to the levitation and the like women can smell the pheromones and all that sort of stuff, I think that people are getting out over their skis. One other thing that Charlie talks about, which is super smart. I love Charlie, by the way. Moist Critical is fucking phenomenal. He says that people can feel super disgusted if they do break their no-fap streak. And that is something that's really dangerous. How much do you benefit from the reduction in porn use and fapping compared with how disgusted and ashamed do you feel about yourself if and when you do break it? And if that does happen, you go, well, oh God, I've actually created a situation in which like you're asking yourself to do one of the two things that you were biologically designed to do, survival and reproduction. Okay, don't do the thing that's associated with reproduction. When people mean no fap, what they should really mean for the most part is no porn.
But it's just people being lonely.
Charlie, come on the podcast, man.
I think most people have recognized that there are so many lonely people out there, but they've learned that those lonely people will pay for the experience of being part of a group or like feeling like a friend. So they exploit it.
Do you see, for example, again, the red pill community has a lot of benefit, but do you see aspects of the red pill community somewhat being like that?
There was a study done where they brought people into a room and as they walked in, they tossed a coin in front of them and the coin landed heads or tails. If you were heads, you were red team. If you were tails, you were blue team. It was split evenly after people had come in. They'd go over and they'd speak to the blue team and they go, so what do you think about the red team? And they go, dude, they're kind of they look a bit sort of stupid, don't they? I mean, they're definitely not as smart as us. And like, you can tell they're just not. You go, everybody knew that this choice was completely arbitrary upon the moment that you walked in. And yet humans' desire to become tribal just appears, it just fucking manifests out of thin air. As soon as you create a them and an us, people will bind together over the mutual hatred of the out-group and the mutual love of the in-group. Yes, if you have a movement, people will feel like they're a part of it, right? They'll, especially if it's men. We were talking on the podcast that people should go and check out, that men will bind together over a shared purpose. That's what we're designed to do. That's why relationships that you have, friendships that you have that transcend just friends, but are also part of a business or perhaps a larger movement are going to be deeper even than brothers sometimes, than family members, because there is something about shared suffering and a shared purpose. And that's what people get. So yeah, does it create support for people? Absolutely. Would I rather men be lost and alone or have a community? Like, absolutely. Like, find your guys' stuff. But as soon as you bind together over like an ideology or a particular movement, you start to see like runaway extremes of that occur. When you group people together, that tribal dynamic can cause whatever the original noble purpose. We're going to teach men about how to become better dating communicators or whatever. And then the loudest, most extreme voices sometimes can take over. And you've got to be careful. Like if you're going to be the leader of a movement, you need to make sure that it can't get hijacked by people, because you can have the most noble of intentions when it first starts. And if you're not careful with how you discipline the movement and how you control it going forward, it can end up in some pretty nasty places.
All right. Hi, guys. So my question for you is, how much money do you think a guy should make per year?
I have no clue.
She's going to say some hyper.
$1 million? $2 million?
So nice. Sometimes I wonder if some people are just unaware of
These are young.
How
These
money
are pretty
works?
young people. Yeah.
And this is Arizona State University, right? Arizona State University, ASU is like known as a party school, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Or I think a lot of hot chicks go there.
Yeah.
I think.
Interesting.
We'll find out.
Like fully like adult. Someone that you would consider wanting to be with the rest of your life.
300K, 3 figures.
Okay. So why is that?
Just because, like, that's a stable income, I'd say.
100, like 500 grand? Is that a lot?
No, that's 500 is
Like normal?
on a good day. Yeah. I mean, it depends.
Okay. A lot. We're expensive.
Yeah. Millions.
Mills. Shit. Okay.
I don't really care. I mean, I like
She has
when
a
guys like
longboard
pay
too.
for
There we
dates
go.
and stuff.
She's
If a
chill.
guy made 30K a year, is that something you're okay with?
Yeah, I think that would be great.
Like your husband?
Oh shit, husband. Yeah, I think that would be fine. If it was my husband, I'd be in love with him. So yeah.
Let's
There
go.
you go.
100,000.
120K.
K and like maybe like 120.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say like 80 to 150.
Oh,
I love the fact that there's some periods of girls where like one girl, there was a girl before that did 100 and the other girl was like 120. Home girl there's like, yeah, 80 to 120. She's like 80 to 150.
You have low standards.
Yeah, exactly. Just the nastiest little fucking snipe.
She's already like, my imaginary husband already makes more than your imaginary husband.
You frugal bitch.
Oh, God.
what is the lowest you would go, though?
500,000.
I could have a nice like settled life with like a 200,000 a year. Like
Okay.
normal, great. Yeah.
What's the lowest, though, that you would go for?
I don't think money is stopping. Maybe like a.
It has to be. You just said 1 or 2 mil.
I was going to take a wild guess and say that everyone that they showed probably is from a household that makes about 200.
That's what I was about to say.
Just a
yeah.
random guess. I don't have any idea how much it costs to go to school, but it's probably very expensive.
And the chick with the longboard probably comes from a working class background. That's a problem as well, though, that the background and the lifestyle that you come from in terms of your family also is going to restrict your mating pool. So like, this is what we talked about. For people that didn't watch the podcast, go and watch the podcast. We talked about this at length and it was really great. The tall girl problem is what I've deemed this ever increasing group of high performing women competing for an ever decreasing group of ultra high performing men. Women on average earn £1,111 more than men do between the ages of 21 and 29, and 2 women for every 1 man will complete a 4-year US college degree by 2030. On average, women want a man who is wealthier and better educated than them, or at least the same. But the problem is, as you have this ever increasing group of women, there is a smaller and smaller cohort of men that are as educated or more educated or employed than them. Everybody has the tall girlfriend, right, who is 5'11" without heels. And if you want to date a man that's taller than you and you want to wear heels, you're looking at like professional athletes, right? Yeah. There is a very small pool of men for whom you can do this. Now, if you already come into the situation with a upper middle class, I mean, 300K is like, got to be upper class. It's not even middle class, right?
Yeah.
If you come into it with that as your set point, and then you start to earn relatively well, your preferences are totally skewed. Like, how the fuck are you supposed to work out what it is that you want?
Mm-hmm.
And also, you can snide your mate by saying, like, my imaginary husband's richer than your imaginary husband. It's a brutal reality that as women accumulate more status, resources, and education, they limit their own dating pool and then have to compete. Let's say that you're a 30-year-old who's worth $100,000 a year and has a PhD as a woman. You're competing with a 20-year-old barista from Starbucks, and the partner that you're trying to get doesn't see much difference between the two of you. Like, honestly, guys do not care about the partner's education level or employment. That's not to say they don't care about conscientiousness or intelligence, but the reason that most women care about them for men is that it's a proxy for both. Men are just happy with the intelligence regardless of the education level. The same isn't quite so true in reverse.
Right.
These street interviews are ruthless, man. They
That's what I'm
are
saying, yeah.
really, really good at making people look dumb.
Right.
I mean, we have managed to find some grade A candidates.
Mhm.
Yeah, this is like weapons grade, nuclear warhead style street interviewing. One slight concern that you do see coming out of advice on the manosphere is that it can cause men to obsess over how much money they do earn and to also kind of count themselves out of the dating market if they don't earn a particular amount. And don't get me wrong, like on average, women want to, but that's on average. No, I think
this would black pill people.
Yeah. So the problem with this video, and it's been doing the rounds for a little while, is that these girls are so young. They haven't been whacked in the face by life all that much. So it's a very idealized version of relationships. If you're 18 or 19, you've had what? One boyfriend or a couple of boyfriends perhaps at best through high school. And now you're at college and you're being confronted by this girl who's got... This is the thing about street interviews. You don't know the difference between what's called revealed and stated preferences, right? So stated preferences are what you want to tell the world you want, and revealed preferences are what you actually end up wanting. Now, for the most part, what happens is women will underplay the hypergamy when they state it. It's like when you face the stark reality of heading to work every day while your husband stays in the house to like play dolls with the kids, that might be a little bit different. But you also have another like signal thing going on here, which is that the wealth of your partner as a woman is a indicator of your status. The same thing happens in reverse for the attractiveness of your mate as a man. So men that have more attractive partners are seen as higher status by both men and women. So men don't just want an attractive partner because they're attracted to them, but because of what it says about them to the other people around them. And the same is true for women when it comes to the partner income. So here you have this very like performative, you'll notice that all of the girls that were on their own said less on average, I think. The girls that were in a group started to like bid each other up because they don't want to be like, do you want to be the girl in the group of friends where everyone's gone 200 grand, 300 grand,
50 grand?
Do you want to be the 50 grand girl? Like, obviously not. So street interviews are funny, but I would take them with a mountain of salt when it comes to indicating people's mating preferences.
Especially on a college campus.
With like children, basically. Yes.
Or any interview with any Miami girl.
At all times.
Obi Vincent.
How did you get big? Because it's one thing to be lean.
Right.
But you're big. How'd you get, like, what, was there a particular style of training, or do you think you just responded well to training? Was there something specific that you did?
Honestly, it was old school way of getting me. It was just bulking and then training. I bought the Arnold encyclopedia of bodybuilding.
Yeah.
I bought that. And I was just like, and then reading all of that. And then with dieting, I started to learn what bulking was. And
how heavy did you let yourself get? Like, what was your heaviest on like a bulk?
115, 116 was around my heaviest.
Wait, how much do you weigh now? Because you still look dense.
I'm about 113, well, 114 after Christmas, but 112 is what I try and stay, well, 110 is what ideally I want to be at. Because that is not too heavy that I can, because now
So you're around 112?
Yeah.
We're the same way. We're
What's the actual pounds?
246.
246.
Yeah. So the thing is, what I've realized is the heavier I start to get when I do conditioning workouts, it's just a struggle. You know, the aerobic stuff is just a killer.
Yeah.
So I try not to get too heavy. But with bulking, like old school bulking, you know, when I started to add size was just eating a lot. And I started to learn more macros and calories, and I was just loads of food.
Yeah.
And yeah, bodybuilding I used to do because when you're younger, you have time. So I was at uni, at college at uni, and I would train twice a day. I used to do the twice a day training, and then I used to do the old school shoulders. So what single body parts? You know, now everybody's like, no, you don't need to do that anymore. You can do full body. You can do push pull. I
found that to be really motivating, just to pick one body part, because it's like really simple. Oh, I'm just going to do shoulders today. I found it's easy to be consistent with that.
Yeah. So I mean, now there's so many scientific research that says you can now just do push pull, full body, and that's optimal too. But I did the old school way. You know how bodybuilders would do shoulders in the morning, maybe like back in the evening, you know, biceps in the morning, and you know, something else in the evening. I did that. I had the time. And when I worked in retail, I would go to the gym early in the morning and do my cardio work and then go back and do some bodybuilding. So I did.
Don't tell us that you worked at Abercrombie.
No.
Okay.
I did, sadly.
No, I didn't work at Abercrombie. Okay. I worked in Selfridges and I worked for Reese, and that's slightly more cooler than working for
what's
Abercrombie.
Selfridges?
Selfridges is like a really if you go to London, if you go to England, if you go to Central London, West End, Selfridges are this big. Do you know Harrods? You've heard of Harrods, surely. No.
What's Harrods?
Harrods is, it's one of those. What would I equivalent? You know, like Macy's in New York.
Yeah.
So Selfridges is similar to that.
Okay.
So
okay.
really expensive, cool, but Selfridges had a mix of super expensive and cool brands. And when you were young, you wanted to work either for Selfridges or Harrods. Harrods was more luxury. So that's in Knightsbridge. So I worked in Selfridges in West End, and everyone's cool and trendy. So that was when I lost a lot of weight and I was feeling myself. And that's kind of why I worked in Selfridges. So
just Selfridges, the website, that's all.
Oh, you can find pictures of what it looks like. It's a big department store, but it's bougie as anything. So that was kind of, for me, working there made me also, it's like you're trying to impress people, right? So that's why I started to go to the gym more, just so that I can impress people. And actually I quit that job because I became a personal trainer. I didn't know you could be a personal trainer. I didn't know that was a job. So, and my parents were like, my mum was like, what? Personal trainer? Because I went to uni and studied marketing and finance.
How'd they feel about that?
They were like, well, what does that mean? That doesn't sound like a job. You teach people how to exercise. And I was like, yeah, that's a job. You can do that. And I mean, it's taken a while. I mean, even still when I started doing this whole social media thing, they were like, okay, what do you do? What exactly is your job title? And I'm like, I teach people how to lift weights. And Nigerians now they're getting better at understanding what that means. But when I was a personal trainer, it took a while for my mum especially to like realize that this is actually an option as a job. And that was when I went full into fitness. That was when I was full into the whole bodybuilding. I had the bags with your meals that you can put. I can't remember the name of it.
Six-pack bags.
Yeah, the Tupperware full of your meals, walking around with that, and then just having
gallon of water.
Yeah.
All right, I got to know that. Like, how do you handle? Because like one of my aunts, as I started getting bigger, one of my aunts is a nurse, and she pulled me aside one Thanksgiving, and she's like, "Nsima, are you taking drugs?"
Yeah.
So, because like you got big, how, like, first off, because people probably ask you that all the time.
Yeah.
But how was that for you? How do you deal with that? Because you probably get that all the time.
I get it all the time. I remember being trolled really badly for it. There was a guy who does YouTube, and he like trolled me for it. And actually, it was so bad. I remember looking at companies that test, and one of them was like, we only test Olympic athletes. And it was so funny because she was like, well, you need to be a team, and it's quite, we don't just test individuals.
Yeah.
Because I was so determined to try and find a way to prove to people. And now I kind of just let people think what they want.
Yeah.
You would never be able to, unless you find someone who can officially test you properly. I'm not scared of that. I think a lot of people feel like, oh, if you're not on any form of steroids, you would be happy to get tested.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, if you do the test yourself,
doesn't matter.
It doesn't work. You're choosing it has to be what do you call, like the
third party tested.
Yeah. And you can't know about it, and they have to surprise you. And So I know people that have tested themselves, and they've been trolled for it. It was like, well,
you're off cycle, dude.
Yeah, you're gonna go when you're not taking anything.
Yeah.
So now I kind of just let people think what they want.
Did it used to bother you though?
It did
in the beginning.
Yeah, that's why I went to research into how to get tested, and because when you know that you are not doing something, people telling you emphatically that you are, and I'm just like, you can't disprove it unless you go through the route of getting tested. But then if you test yourself, it doesn't work because you're controlling it. So yeah, my family's never asked, actually, funny enough, but you will get people that still say it, and then sometimes you get people that will try and pretend that they're just joking.
Yeah.
Oh, where can I buy it from? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Yeah. Like, I know you're not taking it, but where can I get some? I'm like, okay. I mean, yeah. When I was younger, it bothered me a lot. Now I'm just like, and make up your own decision, whatever you want to.
With lifting, were you lifting heavy in the beginning to get big? Or was it still kind of more straight bodybuilding?
Yeah, it was a lot more bodybuilding, like high volume, super high volume.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it was even too much volume. Even when I've toned it down, I still find that I do a lot of volume. And even people on YouTube are like, my God, that's a lot of volume. And I'm just like, because I'm so used to training this way. I even think sometimes I do a workout video, a bodybuilding workout video, and I think I've toned it down. And then people go, this is too much. And I'm just like, this is what I'm so used to.
Yeah.
And I did used to do heavy lifting too, but not to the extent of trying to, do 280 kilo deadlifts and things like that.
You wanted good quality repetitions and good set after set, right?
Exactly. I think that's also kind of what a lot of people will always say to you if they watch my training video. Oh, he's that guy that's always like form. Like I would use. I remember, was it Ben Bukowski? He said I can make a 5 kilo dumbbell. I don't know what you do in pounds, equivalent. Look and feel heavy, and that always stuck with me. And Kai Green also is known for just using lightweight and making it work and it's all about form. And I took a lot of that information to away and. For me, form over everything. So every time you watch my bodybuilding videos, it's not glamorous. I don't shout like I'm crazy. I'm not like, rah! I'm so calm. And people are like, how is this workout effective?
I'm going to show you how to run.
Yeah.
While you're here.
Yeah. I mean,
because you can run the same way. You don't have to work nearly as hard as you might think. I'll get you through it, big guy.
Do you know what? I think it's just my body, when I start running, just going, what is he doing? What's happening? This is what are you doing? So running is one I used to just see running and you just put in your shoes and go.
Yeah.
But then when I learned that there's so many technicalities to it, now I've realized there's more to running than just put on your shoes and go.
Beef. Power Project family, it is grilling season. Now, I really don't know much about grilling since I use an air fryer at home. My boy Andrew does, though. So, since it's grilling season, it's time to get your hands on some Piedmontese beef. We love those glizzies. We love that beef. Andrew, tell them more about it.
Yeah, guys. So, like you mentioned, they do have those glizzies.
Hey, yo!
For those that don't know, that's just a hot dog, but it's all beef hot dog and it's amazing. My favorite thing to smoke is their prime rib, though. And, it's grilling season. So, dust off those grills, dust off those smokers, and head over to cpbeef.com, and at checkout, enter promo code POWER to save 25% off your order. Links to them down in the description as well as the podcast show notes.
Get your glizzy gobbler on.
Pete Rubish.
A huge transition too, away from performance enhancing drugs. And did you have some sort of moment where like Jesus came down and he had a conversation with you? He's like, you need to come back to the good side. You've been on the dark side for a long time. Like, what happened and what led to some of those decisions?
Yeah, so I mean, I was on anabolic steroids and ran cycles for 9 years, right? Started when I was 20, and then up until 29, that's when I came off. So I just done a meet. I tried a pretty big cycle. It was the biggest cycle of my life going into that meet. So the last 2 weeks, this wasn't during the whole duration of the cycle, but the last 2 weeks I was doing 1,500 milligrams of testosterone enanthate. So 1.5 grams of test, right? Very high amount. Would have been cool to see what my test levels were like at that point. And then 1,200 NPP. So 1.2 grams NPP on Nandrolone.
What's NPP? Oh,
it's like the short, fast-acting version of Deca with less sides, I think. So it kicks in quicker. You don't get all the bad sides you get with Deca. And threw that in as well. Then
there's got to be some orals, right? I mean,
yeah.
It's not an official cycle unless we're on 3 things at one time.
Got to get all the food groups in there.
Cover your bases. So I was doing Anavar for a while, about 50 milligrams a day. And I love Anavar. It's my favorite. That was. And then at the end, I came off that and did Halo testing because I tried to combine them. So I was trying to do Halo and Anavar at the same time. And the liver toxicity was way too much to handle. to the point like you would take it and within 30 minutes you want to throw up because you couldn't even. I couldn't even sit up. I'd be laying on the couch and I'd just be like, I feel awful. I feel like I'm gonna vomit.
The heartburn's nice.
Oh, it's just so much. The heartburn wasn't too bad, but the blood pressure too, where your head feels like it's gonna explode. Yeah, it was really healthy stuff. You know.
And let me ask you this: is that an exaggeration, or does your head actually feel pressurized?
It feels pretty pressurized. You get a headache like legitimately 30 minutes after the halo testing. So you get the nausea because your liver is it's under serious stress. And I was taking too much. The last 2 weeks I tried to go 40 milligrams of halo, which is an absurd dose.
Wow.
You want to do about 20. I mean, I'm not telling anybody to do that, but if you're a standard dose would be 20.
You just broke Nsima.
Yeah, I know. I was like, I'm not condoning this, but
made his gorilla mind go down the wrong pipe.
I'm not giving advice here.
Fucking lost.
You do 20 milligrams, and I'm like, let's go 40 because I really want to pull 900 officially. I've done it in training, right, a few times. It's like I got to get it knocked out in a meet, and in the end, did I get it done? No. So I got the 904 to my knees, and that was it. But that's kind of the long backstory. And then after that, my wife was like, if we're going to have a baby, let's do it now. Come off now. So after the meet, I decided to come off November, and then here we are. Been off for 2.5 years. So it's been a wild ride.
And at first, when you started to come off, how long did you hold on to those gains? And do you think it's possible for people to hold on to any remains of the gains that they got from anabolic steroids, the more distance they get from it?
I think if you come off completely, absolutely not. You're going to lose like everything for the most part. That's not to say there's not some degree of muscle memory, but within a year, it was all gone. I mean, I went back. It felt like almost to square one, not entirely, obviously, because you've still been training a while. But I want to say bench dipped down to about 315, and it was at 485 at the peak in training. In a meet, 463. So it went all the way back down to 315, 300-ish. Deadlift got down to like 6 from 9. And it was a rapid, loss of muscle and strength over the course of months. So the first couple of months, you're still hanging on to quite a bit, even though your test levels are dipping.
6 months or so, maybe you can kind of hold on to some stuff.
Yeah, I'd say up to 8 even. And then as you get closer to that year, it's all gone. It's like if I had gone TRT, I think I could have maintained a lot of it. Not been quite as strong, but maintained quite a bit of that strength. But it just, my body weight dipped down to about 210 at the lowest from 250, 255. So, and right now I'm walking around about 220, 225, depending on how well I'm eating.
Any warnings to people that are going to go, because you decided not to go the TRT route? I don't think you had other interventions. A good friend of mine has said that like he thinks that if young people especially are going to come off testosterone cycles, he thinks that they should look into maybe taking medication for their mind and for their, so they don't get like depressed and stuff. Do you think that some people should look into that, or like what was your experience?
Yeah, I mean, it was really tough mentally. I felt pretty depressed at various times because your sense of identity is gone. Think about it, your whole life, not your whole life, but the last 10, 15 years, everyone's known you as this really strong guy. You're known for your deadlift, your strength, and being jacked and all that. And that's your whole basis of what people know you for. And then that's kind of stripped away completely, where there's no more, you're not getting the compliments, you're not getting all the attention. It fades away. It faded away fast. And you're just another guy at that point. And that was tough. It was like a transition to where that was probably one of the toughest things. You have to kind of come to terms with that and redefine yourself, as we talked about. But it's taken years. It's been 2.5 years, and just now I'm kind of becoming comfortable with who I am now. And I still have the knowledge. I've still done what I've done, hit the numbers I've hit, and I'm at peace with that. But now it's kind of time to pivot to a new life. And I still coach plenty of guys in powerlifting. I'm still immersed in the industry, but I just have to do different things myself. So I still train some powerlifting, but it's a lot more bodybuilding. It's a lot more running, different things like that to kind of keep me sane. So it's mentally, a lot of guys, the reason they wouldn't come off is it's just very tough. You essentially shrivel up, lose all your muscle, you lose your strength, you lose your identity. And why would you do that when you can just take TRT? And I even, I've considered going back on it various times. I'm not saying I wouldn't. Like, I think TRT is awesome. I think it's a good thing for a lot of guys. And and I have nothing against it, but I just feel decent now. So you have to almost wait. You have to get through that tough phase.
Yeah. Before you started, you said 20 to 29 you were on. What was your history before that? Were you an athlete? Were you already lifting quite a bit beforehand?
Yes, sir. Yeah. So I was in school. I was doing football. I was doing basketball. I was doing track. And I wasn't great at any of them, but I started in various sports. And come my senior year, I decided I'm just going to lift because I did not like being in season in a sport and you lose a lot of your strength. You lose about 10 pounds of body weight from running so much. And I just enjoyed lifting more. So I went all in on that when I was about 18, entering my senior year, dropped all the sports. And but I had that background growing up. Even baseball was mixed in. It was just, my parents had me in all different sports all the time. Year round, I was doing something.
Yeah. And I'm kind of curious, kind of from what Mark said, what was the hardest part about coming off? Because like he mentioned, you were a different human being at the time. It's like your shape was different. You were still you, but I'm assuming like when you look at videos of when you were pulling and all that, do you feel like that's you?
No.
It's
I look back at that and I can't even identify with those weights. I don't know because Mark's completely transitioned to a different stage of his life. I don't know if you feel that way, but like,
I went to a meet one time, maybe like a year ago or something like that, and somebody was lifting some crazy weight, and I look at my brother and I go, "These guys are fucking out of their mind." And my brother's like, "You were lifting this like 2 years ago, and you had a lot more plates on than what they even have now." So I agree with you 100%. It's like hard to even relate at a certain point.
Yeah, it doesn't seem. My mind can't comprehend like having that much weight on my back, like on a squat, like 800 pounds around there. I can't imagine it.
Fuck.
It's 900-pound deadlifts. I can't imagine that. So it's completely different now because you're lifting a fraction of that, and your mind's not there. Like I'm not in that, purely lifting as heavy as possible, aggression, kind of kill mode, which is how it was. It was my whole life. Lifting was my entire life. Everything else got cast aside for many of those years because that's what it took to get to that level. I felt like you had to go all in. There were a lot of sacrifices. There were a lot of disruptions. Relationships were more volatile, but that was part of the cost to get to that level. And I don't necessarily regret it, but I would have done things differently.
What about somebody coming to you now? You have your own gym. There's some power lifters in there. And what about someone hitting you up online or in person and saying, "Yeah, man, I want to go for it all, man. I'm 20. I moved out of my parents' house and I want to go on a cycle and I want to go all in." Are you kind of talking them out of that, or like, how do you think you'd handle that situation?
Yeah, guys come to me and their decision is made up. They're going to do it. They're going to do it or they're not. And I can kind of lead them on a path where they do it more responsibly, or where I think you'd get more out of it this way. Because if we look at like a John Hack, the very moderate dosages, cycling off, that sort of thing, he's milked his gains for more than if he were just blasting right from the beginning. So I think that's a smarter approach. I wish I would have done it that way. So I try to tell them, like, we can do this more efficiently. You don't have to go to Trend right away or something like that. But I have guys who come to me and they're like, "Listen, I don't have anything going for me in my life. I don't have a relationship with my parents. This is all I got. I'm going for it." And I'm like, I completely respect it. I get it. Like, this is their life and that's it. They're going for it. And who am I to tell them like, no, you got to be more, cautious when I went just as hard. It's like, that's what they want. They're going all in. And I don't necessarily have a problem with that. So it depends on the circumstance, the context of it. But normally, yes, I try to tell guys, like if someone comes to me 18 years old, which happens, and they're like, "I'm ready to jump on," like, just wait a little bit. You haven't even optimized your training yet. Like, give it even 2 years. Wait till you're 20. Things like that. Or just let's start out with a very moderate test dose. So I try to steer people properly rather than, I can't convince someone not to do it. If I tell an 18-year-old and he's completely convinced, it's not going to matter.
Yeah.
So I try to share my experiences and be very open. But I feel like that almost helps people more when you're like, this is how you need to do it responsibly. Maybe wait a little longer.
How to never procrastinate, how to up your testosterone. Blah, 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 blah about dopamine. I've listened to him and I'll do the 7 and 8 minutes and by God, he doesn't say anything. It really is a skill how he can go round and around. But when you have somebody from Stanford that does not have the checkered past. He's going to be the guy that comes in the thing, going to be the new guy on the white horse wearing the white hat, right?
He wears all black.
When he is dishonest, now it's a lie. And that's very different. You don't ever hear me call someone a liar. Never. When people are wrong, that's what I say. I say that they have it wrong. And there's a massive difference in lying as opposed to having it wrong. As opposed to you misspoke. Massive. I don't like that he's a liar. He's a liar. I don't like that. But this gentleman that isn't like the rest of us, he's much more polished to come in and say the things that he's saying. He would, of course, know the difference. And I got to go online. Look, I never looked it up. In all fairness, I never looked it up. When I was a little boy, my mother told me what it meant. That it's not a matter of saying something that isn't true. It's a matter of saying something isn't true when you intend to deceive. The example she gave me, if today is Tuesday and somebody says, what day is it? And you tell them it's Wednesday, but you actually think it's Wednesday. You then have not lied. You're just wrong. So when I watch Huberman go on and tell people how they can up their testosterone fourfold or their growth hormone fourfold, that is not only not true, somebody in his position would know it's not true. So by my mother's definition, he lies. I don't like that he's doing that. I don't know why he's doing that. And it's the biggest problem within our space.
Can you pause?
It's the biggest.
Just here's briefly my thoughts on this is that I think Huberman is normally like citing studies that he sees. Maybe occasionally it's somebody that he knows or has seen something from. I don't think he's like pulling these things out of thin air. However, where I would agree, this is where things get kind of cloudy and blurry a little bit. When somebody says that someone increased their testosterone fourfold, but they're also talking about maybe their own usage of TRT, or they're talking about other people that they know that use performance enhancing drugs, when it's in the same podcast or in the similar like paragraph, it's kind of making you think, oh my God, that thing's going to increase my testosterone fourfold the same way that performance enhancing drugs are going to do. Not saying that Andrew Huberman's ever said that. I've never heard him say that. But I do think that people are making comparisons there and they're like, I'm going to go buy that supplement. I'm sure when he recommended Fedosia and some of the other things that it probably sold like fucking crazy on the internet when he talked about it on Rogan and things like that.
Talked about it on ours too.
Yeah, on our show as well. I think, he was on our show like at the beginning of the pandemic and stuff like that. And talking about the powers of sleep and growth hormone being produced from the sauna and maybe even the cold plunge and things like that. Yeah, it does. I mean, working out will increase your growth hormone levels. Will it be the same as running 4 IUs of growth hormone every day for, 3 years? I don't know. But again, I haven't heard Huberman say that specifically, but I think that is an area that can get cloudy from time to time.
I think on Two Bears, when he was on Two Bears, when he talked about the Fedosia and Tonkat, and also maybe it was when he was on our show too, he has said he has seen in some people their testosterone increase by up to 300 to 400 points. So that could be someone going from 300 to 600 or 700. But that's not, and again, I'm very curious, like if somebody can comment below and let us know where maybe this fourfold thing is. When we look at like how low testosterone is in some men these days because of their lifestyle factors, because they're not eating good foods, because maybe they're not in shape, because maybe they're not exercising, they're not getting the type of sleep that they need to get. A lot of young guys have low test and they think they're just destined to have low test. Once they start getting their hormones in check, once they start getting their sleep, their habits, I meant to say habits, not hormones, things can increase. And then let's say then they do start to supplement some other things. Like when we had Adam Hotchkiss on the show the other day, and he mentioned how he's run into some people where they fixed their thyroid and their testosterone came up, came up 300, 400, 500 points, not by addressing their test, by addressing their thyroid. These are things that people don't really think about. They mainly think, oh, I need more tests, I need TRT. That's usually the immediate place that guys go because TRT is so popular. But a lot of these other ancillary things can actually be that thing to get you the increase that you're looking for, to get you to decent levels and even above average levels, right? So again, the fourfold thing, because he uses such colorful words all the time, I'm not even sure if I can believe that the fourfold thing is true. I have it at the 300, 400 points because of Fedosia and Tonkat. But again, maybe that has worked for some people in that way. Because I remember hearing him say that. But he didn't say research said. He said that I have seen it work in certain people like that. That's not a crazy claim.
I'd also say that a little bit unfair, in my opinion, of Chael Sonnen to say that he's not like the rest of us, because I found it, my experience with Andrew Huberman, to be different. Andrew Huberman came here to Super Training Gym. He did work out with us. He did some deadlifts and stuff with us.
You taught him how to bench.
Yeah, taught him how to bench. He, which all of that was a little bit of a surprise for me, because you don't know how each person's going to be when we invite them here. But he was down. He hung out. He's in good shape.
He is.
He's got a big neck. I mean, that's admirable. When someone's got when someone's got a neck, right? It's like you got to kind of be like, yo, bro, like, yeah, hat goes off to you. Congratulations, right? He looks like he's in great shape. He hung out in my house and stuff, and he was super nice, and just he spent some time. So I kind of disagree with that statement a little bit. I do think that's actually what surprised me about him, is he was more like the rest of us than I expected. What you got, Andrew?
I'm thinking again, going back to like stuff working and not working, because like Nsima, you've had your labs done after taking, I forgot how many weeks of
Fedosia and Tonkat. I did like 8 weeks of it.
And it worked.
My luteinizing hormone went up quite a bit. I don't think my test went up that much though, but that's because I already had great lifestyle habits. I already take care of myself. But my LH went up a lot.
Yeah, and then I'm just thinking again, like what works? Like, what if somebody starts taking this stuff and all of a sudden they're just like, well, shit, I'm on basically I'm on a test booster. My testosterone's going to be high, and therefore their workouts are better. Therefore their habits are now in check. And I understand that has nothing to do with what the supplement claims to be able to help you with. But again, did it work? Yes, it worked. So it's just, I don't know, it's strange. And then, him kind of going after the, I guess, personality or whatever, or like integrity of Andrew Huberman without knowing him. Yeah, that's just kind of a bummer.
It's a tactic, though. We talked about this tactic before.
Oh, yeah.
What did he say? He's not like the rest of us. What does that do? Separates
us
him and
versus
makes
them.
Ding, 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 ding,
yeah,
ding.
and then of course the fourfold thing's interesting, and then what Mark was mentioning, like again, when people have their arguments back and forth or their debates, they'll bunch things together. So it seems like X supplement does da-da-da-da. Remember Jay Cutler when he did this? So now you kind of associate this supplement with Jay Cutler, and it's just like a weird tactic. And that's for debates, and that's why like debating sucks sometimes.
Anthony Chaffee.
Let me ask you this. Like, before you went full carnivore, because now there are some people who, like, for example, Paul Saladino, he went carnivore. He was pure carnivore a few years ago. Now he has honey and fruits, etc. Do you remember, like, what was in your diet that was actually giving you issues at the time? Let me ask that first.
Well, that's the thing. I didn't even think of it in that way. I didn't even realize how much of an impact that dropping the plants had on me. I equated it to the alcohol, because that made such a big difference.
Yeah, it does.
And so I always thought that that's what it was. I'm like, my God, I'm just feeling amazing. But it coincided with that. I didn't see at the time how big of a difference it made. Looking back, how I could tell was when I was in England playing rugby. 5 years later, I was like 25 at the time. It was harder to get the same kind of meat that I was getting before, and it was, I don't know why, but it just wasn't. It just didn't cook right. I don't know what the hell it is with the meat over there, but like I try to cook a steak and it would just gray. I could never get it to brown, and like so it'd be like cooked well done and just gray on both sides and sweaty looking. I'm like, oh, that's horrible. So it wasn't very appealing. And so my workaround was getting like pre-cooked meats, but half the time it was like breaded, so they had like breadcrumbs or something like that on like the chicken. And I was like, is it that big a deal? Dose makes the poison, all that sort of stuff. So it was like maybe just a little bit. And so, you can convince yourself of anything. And so I convinced myself of that. And I remember just like a couple months into playing over in England, I was like, why don't I feel as just superhuman amazing as I normally do? Am I not pushing myself? Am I not working as hard? I'm 25 now. Am I just over the hump? Am I dying now? And I just like thought, my body's just breaking down. I didn't know, but I was getting like these little injuries and just nagging injuries and like pulled muscles and just sore. I was just like, this is not like me. This is not normal. Like normally, I just felt literally superhuman all the time. And now I wasn't. And so that was the point that I started reincorporating just whole food plants. I wasn't eating junk, but that little slip off of just like, well, isn't that big a deal having breaded meat, was that sort of the crack in the dam, where now I wasn't just like, I'm not eating any plants, absolutely not. It was, well, it's not that big a deal. And then there's a big plant-based push after that. Dr. I think it was Joel Furman came out with the Gomes diet. And
did you ever go down that rabbit hole for yourself? Like, did you ever go plant-based for a while? Or
no, God, no. Okay. But my brother was really into that. And at first Furman wasn't saying, oh, don't eat meat at all, but just make salad the focus, right? Now, it was a front for just the whole raw food vegan sort of thing, which is what he espouses now from the sounds of it. But my brother got really into that, and he read his book, and he was like, wow, this guy makes a lot of sense. And, he's talking about his anti-VEGF in mushrooms, and this is good against cancer. And I remember thinking, I was like, yeah, but mushrooms have carcinogens in them. So it has this thing that's good against cancer, but it has things that can cause cancer. So I was like, on balance, is it a benefit? And then, also, it has anti-VEGF, which is something that we use to treat cancer in certain cancers in certain situations, but it's chemo, and like chemo, other chemo, like you don't take it unless you have cancer, right? So it's like, oh well, have these mushrooms, they're good at fighting cancer. It's like, right? Do you have cancer? Then why are you taking chemo? And so, that sort of felt a bit weird for me at the time, but you just get inundated with from all sides about these things. So I was like, okay, well, I guess I'll have a bit of mushrooms. I guess I'll have some spinach and all that sort of stuff. But it was all whole foods, and I was still predominantly eating meat. And then sort of, 6 years ago now, that Dr. Sean Baker was on Joe Rogan's podcast talking about the carnivore diet. And my brother saw that, and he was really excited by it. And he said, hey, there's this American doctor, and he played professional rugby, and he's talking about how you can get all your nutrients from eating just meat. And instantly you just sort of pull back from that and saying, oh, how can that be? That can't be possible. But then, the voice of reason in the back of my head just said, well, I basically did that for 5 years in my early 20s. And that now is the period of my life I've never felt better. So like, well, give it a try and watch it. And as soon as I watched it, I was like, this guy's bang on. I mean, there's just like, and it added into the different things that I knew, because there was new research coming out that showing that saturated fat and cholesterol were absolutely not the problem that we blamed them for. And the fructose had come out with Dr. Robert Lustig's work from UCSF, showing that fructose was quite damaging metabolically and likely a contributor or causative factor for a lot of the diseases and problems that we were blaming fat and cholesterol for. And the whole, plants are trying to kill you thing. So I was just like, right, I knew it. I knew plants were trying to kill me, get rid of these stupid things. And I just went back full into it. And then I started really digging into the research and trying to say, okay, what do we know? What can we prove? And what do we still need to find out? And asking questions and trying to check in the literature, like, okay, if meat's really good for you, you should see difference between, vegan and other populations, with if I was thinking maybe sugar, fructose was contributory to maybe possibly autism, looking at the rates of autism, and they all went up at the same time. All these other chronic diseases went up because when we stopped eating meat and fat and things like that and started switching over to more plant-based in the 80s, since the USDA declaration in 1977 saying that cholesterol causes heart disease, so stop it. We listened. We reduced red meat by over 33% since the 1970s, reduced our cholesterol and saturated fat intake roughly the same amount. We replaced a lot of that with chicken. A lot of people ate more like lean chicken and things like that, but red meat came down significantly. And we increased the amount of fruits and vegetables we ate, increased the seed oils, increased the high fructose corn syrups, things like that. And, and the results were, I think, quite telling, because, the obesity rate tripled, heart disease tripled, stroke rates tripled, cancer rates tripled, type 2 diabetes, autoimmune disorders, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and even neurodevelopmental delays such as autism all increased exponentially. They almost didn't exist before then. Now they're like the only thing we treat. And people say, well, we probably had the same rates of autism. We just didn't notice it because, just everyone was stupid in the 70s. Just no one got it. I'm like, come on. You know, I mean,
they weren't testing for it.
Yeah, well,
they didn't have a name for it.
Yeah, sure.
Whatever they want to say. Yeah.
And that's fine. Maybe that's true. Maybe we're calling things autism that we just call like, wow, they're just special. You know, they go on the short bus or something like that, and it's just they don't have a name for it. But now we have a name for it. Now we have diagnoses, and it's still going up. It's going up every decade after decade. Autism rates are going up. So, I mean, we've been paying attention for the last 30 years. So why are those rates going up? So it's not just that this is a stable state, nothing to see here. I don't believe that. And
but quick question about that, because there's a bunch of things here. Like when we're looking at, for example, rates of obesity, autism, and other things that you're mentioning, it's not just obviously because like increase in vegetables and stuff like that. It's like there's the standard American diet has a lot of just like processed foods and a lot of overconsumption. There's a lot of things going on. There's some studies where people will reference and they'll say red meat is a problem, but it's like there's a lot of other factors along with it. So when we're talking about this, it's not just because of the reduction of red meat, right?
No. Yeah, 100%. So there's many things that go involved in that. The point I'm making with that is that you can't say that red meat causes obesity and heart disease and diabetes if you reduce the amount of red meat we're eating and all those things increase dramatically.
Okay.
You know, well, that's the point I'm making. And maybe, you know, look, you know, an argument could be made that maybe red meat does contribute to that sort of things, but these other things contributed more and all that sort of stuff as well. But I don't think it's a one-to-one.
Yeah.
You know, and so but that's what people blame it on. They blame, you know, saturated fat, cholesterol, red meat. This is the problem. Nothing else to see here.
Kind of the thing we saw like on TV time and time again, and the thing you always kind of heard growing up is that dad loves steak, you know, but he shouldn't eat steak because it's not good for his heart.
Yes.
And I think it wasn't so much necessarily the steak, but it was the steak along with probably other things that they were eating, along with just not a great lifestyle. Because, you know, in the 70s and 80s, it was really popular to smoke. You watch a show like Mad Men and the guys are always drinking. They always have like whiskey. And I'm not saying that every household was doing all those things, but usually when we think of dad, we think of somebody who's a little bit overweight and they're eating an enormous steak. And so they're eating a large portion of food. Maybe they don't have that much movement in their life. And maybe the steak is part of the cause because of it has so many calories. But it's also along with their lifestyle, what else they're eating, and the lack of movement, probably.
Oh, absolutely, and I think that you know that's exactly it. You know, it's the potatoes and other things were more of a problem. Smoking, obviously,
you can't eat a potato without some butter on there.
Yeah,
a lot. Let's get some sour cream on there.
Yeah.
Can never seem to salt them quite enough either, right? Some bacon would be perfect, and a little bit of cheese would make it pretty good.
Actually, that'd be a fucking hell of a potato.
And then you would need more stuff on there still.
I think all of that without the potato sounds great.
Alongalani.
You are a fighter that probably gets some of the most steroid accusations because you're built like a bodybuilder.
Always.
But
it used to bother me. It used to bother me, and I used to fight this accusation. I used to always say, why will you say that to me? I used to take all my time to defend myself. Why will you say that to me? You never even meet me. I never did something. I never did because, you know, I never needed to. You know, I never needed to, so I did. You know, you should see my family. Oh, it's impossible for you to be this big, you know, naturally.
Like
it's
that.
Impossible. Impossible to be this big naturally. First, it's impossible to be this big naturally. I'm like, but look at my brothers. They're all the same. We're all the same, right? So all of them are just the same. And one of my brother, he's not even into martial art, right? He's not into martial art. He went to university in England. And after university, he got cancer. And he's been struggling with cancer for all this year. But look at him, right? He come out of the hospital after his treatment, and he's doing maybe 2 months of treatment. And I say, send me a picture. And he sent me a picture, and he looked like he just came out of the gym, right? He has like,
he got shredded.
His body shredded. And I'm like, what have you been doing? He said, no, I just was at the beach and I did a little bit of push-up, and I think I'm starting to feel a bit better. But if you look at him, I mean, it's amazing. I mean, he looked like an athlete, someone who just came out of the gym. He's been spending like the last 3-4 years in the gym. And we're talking about someone who has cancer and who's been in the hospital on the treatment and so on. You see, so I just thought we are, you know, this is just an heritage that we're very lucky to have. But of course, you know, also hard work and dedication. I train every day. I'm very disciplined, so people should not take that away from me. You know, I'm always the hardest worker in the room.
You fought a
and
lot
people who know me, people who knows me or who are close to me, they know that. Yeah.
You fought a lot of different disciplines. Is it sometimes hard to remember, like, what the heck you're doing? Like kickboxing versus MMA, or like you just all of a sudden like want to go and take someone down or something?
Actually, no, I never felt like that.
I'm just thinking, like, man, it must be confusing in there sometimes.
When you're in trouble, yeah. When you're in trouble,
yeah, you just
throw everything at them.
Grab for anything, right?
When you're in trouble, yeah, perhaps.
With Bob Sapp, was that kickboxing or was that just MMA or?
Bob Sapp was kickboxing.
Kickboxing.
Yeah, it was kickboxing.
Have you ever fought Andrew Tate? He's a kickboxer, right?
He was. I think he was. Different weight class, probably.
No, I didn't.
No.
Yeah.
Power Project family, shut your fucking mouth. We've been talking about breathing through your nose and nasal breathing during your sleep for the past 5 years. That's why we've partnered with Hostage Tape. It's the best tape on the market, sticks to your face even if you have a beard. So head to hostagetape.com/Power Project and you'll be able to get a year's supply of tape for 55 cents a day. That shit saves you $150. It's a no-brainer. Links in the description and the podcast show notes. Enjoy the show.
Another thing too is to make sure that you're really compatible with the person that you're with. So, you know, if you love to have sex every day and you feel like you literally need that every day, and the other person doesn't care about it that much, they're like maybe like more like a once a week kind of thing, that might not work great. Like these are all things that you got to kind of like work through and think about, like, because that matters a lot. And I've heard more people talk about it more recently. Like, there's people that are kind of sensitive to the fact that like it really matters for men. Like we're hardwired this way. This is what we're working with. You know, we have testosterone levels that are high, and it just kind of controls the ship a little bit. Not that we're not in control of our actions, but we want to fuck, you know, pretty often. Or at least a lot of men do, right? And so, and there's probably a lot of women. So anyway, the main point there is just to make sure that you kind of line up at least a little bit with sex.
And one thing that I think would be pretty interesting though, along with that, is as a guy, yeah, sex is like always on our minds. Like, yeah, sex is always on our minds. But if you're not a guy who's active, like, and you're not a person who's utilizing energy, like sex in itself is an energetic act. Like, it takes energy. But if you're not doing shit, like if you're not going out working out, like you do jujitsu, you run, we all lift, we still have a good sex drive. But there are some guys who, let's say you're not doing anything and you're like, I want sex all the time. Dog, go fucking work out. Go use your body a bit. And you'll understand, like, yeah, you still want to have sex, but it's not something that is like your primary mode of being and you're not getting it every single day. So now you're angry. There are some people who are like that, but I mean, use your body more, because then it might even out that libido of yours. Or that what you think is your libido might just be you not using your body as much as you should be.
I agree.
Yeah, and it could be
energy.
Yeah, and then if you have the opposite of like a low libido, like if the urges aren't there within the couple, it could be because you're just not as healthy as you should be. Because a pretty good marker of health, in my opinion, is like, yeah, your libido should be a little bit higher, and well, not higher. It should be high enough to where you do want to have sex with your mate. And if it's not, then maybe you might just be a little bit unhealthy. You know what I mean? Like maybe there's something a little bit off to where your body's like, hey, you got to address this before we even start getting horny over here. Like, you know what I mean?
Sleep, we talk about that all the time, but we're not going to get deep into that now. But
we got tons of podcasts on sleep, so just search sleep on the channel.
Yeah.
I think, you know, I think a big thing is to figure out ways to stay attractive to your significant other. So, keeping yourself physically fit is obviously a big part of it. Having like an even mind and being able to withstand some of the stressors of life and being able to be someone who's strong, not just for yourself, but strong for your partner. You're somebody that you know, you can, that they can relate to, they can communicate with, and you're not getting like all depressed and anxious and shit when someone gives you news, you know. These are all things that I think are kind of side things from like actual sex, but I think that you know, if you're slouchy and like when you hear bad news or you get news that you interpret as bad, that can, I don't know, that can just lead them to maybe not be as attracted to you as maybe they once were.
One thing to like maybe do a little bit of a deep dive on is just the idea of a bit of Stoic philosophy. Now, I hate to be that guy, but like it's not about not feeling anything or whatever, because we will feel everything, but it's also just purely not reacting to everything in a volatile way. You brought up anger, right? There are many things that I've, you know, talked about with my girl or even exes that have maybe brought up a bit of anger, but I'm not someone who acts on anger. You know, I can feel it there, but then a conversation can happen, because it's no use of, you know, showing how angry you are. That doesn't show strength. That actually shows quite a bit of weakness in most situations, you know, being outwardly angry. So, I mean, who's that author who you love?
Which one? There's a couple.
The
one that was just here?
No. He wrote the book, The Daily Stoic. Ryan Holiday.
He was on a podcast.
Ryan Holiday.
On our podcast, I mean. Yeah.
Yeah. So he has multiple books on understanding that. But if you're a guy, it's not attractive to be emotionally volatile.
Yeah.
And it's not safe, as we've learned from Dana White and other people. It's not a good idea to be emotionally volatile and not have control over your emotions. The thing is, you can feel all those emotions. It's healthy to understand those emotions, because there are some people on the internet who are like, men cannot show emotion and all that shit. That's bullshit. It's okay to feel those things, but you do not always need to act based off of how you feel. I think that's one of the differences between most men and some women, is that when it comes to our emotions, we can feel them and we can maybe express them, but we need to be careful with how we express them. We can't yell and scream and do that's not the way we need to be operating. And that is more attractive to a woman than being the emotionally volatile man that maybe gets way too sad or way too anxious or way too angry. Got to learn how to control that shit.
Yeah. Since we were talking about like becoming more attractive to our partner, kind of along those lines, but it definitely fits, is you know, people are on their phones a lot. They're on their phones too much, and on pretty much every app you can find some version of like softcore porn, basically. So guarding your inputs on what you are seeing, because right, like if we open up Instagram, especially like the explore page or something, we're gonna see
ass
a lot and a lot of modified, you know, we got the AI shit now. Stuff's going to be photoshopped, but what you're seeing is, I'm not going to say it's not real, because I mean, you know, they are actual people. But, you know, and then there's that, and then there is porn. There's a lot of things that are gonna, and Nsima, you can talk more about this, but they're gonna mess with what we assume is actually attractive, even, you know. And so that way, if you're living there where you're seeing, I don't want to use a rating system, but let's just say 10s every time you swipe, and then you see a real person that you did fall in love with, but now you're all of a sudden being like, oh, well, there's these 10s over here. And now you might not find your mate as attractive on something that's not even real.
Yeah.
So guarding your inputs and cleaning up your feed can definitely help you out, because if not, it's going to fuck everything up. Because especially if it's porn, right? If you're watching a lot of porn and you're jerking off to that, now you're not going to really be as like ambitious about having sex.
The phone is a huge factor, you know. A lot of times you just sit down and you go to even try to watch something as a couple, and then one of you starts like scrolling through your phone. You know, it's really easy, and just it's just kind of a dumb thing. Like, you're already sitting in front of a screen, you know. But if you're agreeing to try to sit there and watch a movie with somebody, the easiest thing is just to kind of put your phone away, like put it out of reach. You know, hopefully you're not going to get up and like still want to get on it. But there's little things like that. I think they add up a lot. Where, or even if the person goes to talk to you and you're just like on your, you know, you're like trying to communicate with you, but every time they kind of turn around, you're always on your phone. So whatever way you got to figure out how to negotiate that. Even though I do use my phone quite a bit, I try to use it when I'm really not around my wife.
Yeah, no, I agree with you guys on the phone thing. And Andrew, dude, the porn and the feed thing, I think it's a silent. It's like a silent influencer. It's a silent influencer on the mind of men, especially. I can speak for myself and a few homies that we've had this conversation with because we're millennials. But as a millennial, when you are used to, first off, watching a lot of porn, beating your shit to a lot of different women, right? There's this thing within this whole red pill community where they believe that men are wired to have more than one mate and it's not natural for men to be monogamous. I can understand the idea that it may not be natural, like, because if I'm being perfectly honest, there is an innate want to fuck somebody else. That doesn't necessarily mean that I need to act on that want, or that want cannot be satiated by my partner. So within these red pill spheres, guys are like, oh yeah, you know, it does make sense for a guy to be with a woman that wants a guy that's going to be with one woman is dreaming, is delusional, right? But no, I think what's partially happening is young men are too used to novelty that comes from avid porn use because you're beating your meat to all these different women. So when you try to be in a monogamous relationship, you get bored quickly because your novelty isn't satiated. And now you're like, you can't be with one woman. Monogamy isn't for everyone. I'm not saying that everyone needs to subscribe to monogamy, but I do think there are a lot of things that are fucking up a man's ability to be monogamous outside of the genetic need to fuck a different woman, which I think is honestly overstated within that community and just comes down to a lack of sexual self-control upon the man.
Do the people that subscribe to the red pill stuff, what do they talk about with as far as kids? Do they talk about having a lot of kids or no?
So when it comes to the red pill, when it comes to having kids, the big thing about the red pill is they think that like marriage is kind of a scam. And it's a scam in the way that the government gets involved because in some ways, there are a lot of ways men can be fucked when it comes to a bad marriage. You know, if they have kids and she just decides to leave out of the blue, kind of fucked as a guy. So there's a lot of really good education there. But when it does come to having kids, they do believe that if a high value man, which is a man that is, you know, he makes good money, but he's also wanted by many women, if he does choose to have kids with one woman, well, they can have that family. But he also should be able to have different partners that he could just fuck, because just because you're fucking somebody doesn't mean you love them. You've had children and a life with this woman. You love her, but she should be okay with you fucking outside because men don't put, in their eyes, men do not put emotion into sex. Women put emotion into sex, which is why, again, in their eyes, it is not okay for a woman to fuck a guy outside because she doesn't actually want to do that. She only does that when she's in love with somebody else. She can't separate emotion from sex. And for the red pill, men can separate emotion from sex, so they should be able to exercise their sexual options even within a relationship with a woman with children. That's how they look at it. In my eyes, I just think that's a lack of self-control.
I mean, it's on the surface, it sounds very, very good for a man that wants to just fuck but also still have a family and like, and it sounds like a headache, but you know, like,
doesn't it?
That sounds terrible.
I think it's a cope, but
yeah. Oof. Okay. Well, so
that was an aside. Sorry, guys.
Yeah. No. So I guess moving on, something else. It's kind of fucked up, but like, if this will definitely kill sex 100%, is if you're just not good at it. If you know, you finally do get in the bedroom and, you know, you're busting quick or you're not paying attention to her needs. She's not busting at all. Like, you're probably not going to get invited back to the party. You know what I mean? What are you shooting me?
Because you're hitting the nail on the head, brother.
He's giving you points like on PTI.
Got it. Okay, cool. Sounds good. Yeah. You know, it's, you know, guys like build up a lot of anxiety for that thing. And then finally when it happens, you blow it. Thankfully, our homegirl, Susan Bratton, is here to help. We had an amazing episode with sexpert Susan Bratton. Yeah. She talks about a thrust in time technique that I use that works incredible. And that's just like how to last, like basically you can last forever in bed. But yeah, dude, I mean, doing a little bit of research, and I'm not talking about like porn. I'm talking like actually seeking out a sexpert like Susan Bratton on how to like actually make a woman come. Like that shit's very, very important, because if you want to get more of that, be good at it.
Keep them coming back.
Literally.
Here's one thing. Here's a secret.
Uh-oh.
You see what I'm using to speak into the mic?
Your mouth?
Use it more. Yeah. Use it more.
Like it juicy.
Ooh, yeah.
Use this. Use this more, dog. This is what.
Yeah.
This is why I have a great sex life. This right here.
Yep.
This. Use your mouth more. Fucking eat. Right? Not like DJ Khaled, I don't eat box, you eat other things. You don't eat box, bro.
It's a box of pizza.
Susan talks to us about that too. Like, hey, it makes a big difference because your mouth can do way more things than your dick can.
Yeah.
Your dick isn't the only weapon you have. You got a mouth.
Yeah, you got to let them catch up to you. Yeah.
I think it's it's important to like be able to take some cues and to like sometimes things you're doing like aren't working great.
Dan Garner.
And by the way, when it does come to tempo runs, is that like a 6 or 7 for the whole duration of the run, or there aren't any periods where you increase speed or slow down, right? It's that speed for the whole run.
Yeah, so there is different ways to do this, different coaches, so you can actually have tempo intervals. So they're aerobic intervals. It's a weird kind, I know, right? It sounds a little bit weird. People are used to intervals just being high intensity interval training and very anaerobic. But when you control the intensity, you can actually control and do tempo based intervals. It's something I've done a lot for actual athletes in the past in multidisciplinary sports, to where you need speed, agility, conditioning, strength, hypertrophy all at the same time, like hockey players, fighters, those kinds of people. I've done intervals for tempos in the past, more so for a recovery workout. That's basically how I've structured my training for my athletes, to where we'll do intervals, tempo intervals, more as active recovery, but something that's going to produce more fatigue is like what I'm doing for Mark, which is that constant tempo pace. You're going to rock and roll with that thing for 30 minutes, up to like a max of 45 at the absolute most, because once you are moving at that clip for that long a period of time, it's just you're simply gonna start losing the fatigue management battle.
Gotcha.
Yeah, tempo run is just kind of annoying. Like it's just you like running at like kind of a normal, whatever like a normal good pace would be, and then you just ticking it up just a notch or two above that.
Comfortably uncomfortable.
And you're like, this is like it starts to nag at you. You know, you're like, all right.
I know, because you either want to slow down or speed up, but you're just comfortably, and that's what it should feel like. Like that's actually, you're at the threshold. Like you're right there. That's not a very comfortable place to be. Your mind either wants to back off or it wants to actually get after it. But when you're working that clearance, you're doing a lot of things that are going to help you on race day.
What are some of your favorite things to do just on like an Aerodyne bike or like a rower? Because a lot of people have access to those things. What are some of your favorite protocols on some of those things for conditioning?
Yeah, so I really like to incorporate cross training just to move around the stress. If you've got a ton of localized trauma from just only doing running, then that can break down the tissues. It can create inflammation. It can do things that we don't necessarily need in order to continue to drive your systemic work capacity.
Maybe your feet are getting beat up and your calves and stuff. And
right.
Now you can just get off your feet and get on a bike or something.
Especially if they're not doing your myofascial stuff. Like your ability to work with the myofascial and improve your recovery, get things released, get them mobile again. A lot of people don't have those tools, let alone have the knowledge to implement those tools. You've put a bunch of stuff out there which can help people, but some people will just still not do it. You know, myself included, by the way. I tried some of his stuff. By the way, the listeners, this is the sentence that I got at Mark's house the other day. Hey, come into my bedroom for a second. I want to show you some tools.
Nice.
That was the sentence that I got.
And you left happy and you left tired.
And
you were spent.
I left happy, I left tired, and I said, okay, let's go.
You went back to your hotel room and slept like a baby.
Yeah,
there
so
we go. Tired him out. Good job, Mark.
Boom. Done.
And right before this podcast, Nsima also goes, hey, drink this. And it's an unmarked...
It's just to loosen you up.
Yeah.
That's all.
Jesus. Yeah, so this is what I got to deal with here. What was the question? I don't even know.
We were just talking about getting on like an Aerodyne bike.
Oh, cross training.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, cross training. I like to actually move around the stress just to eliminate any kind of build up your foot, that kind of trauma, that localized area. Because you can keep driving systemic work capacity. We're still aerobic. We're still improving the vascular networks. We're still increasing the conditioning of the heart. Like the heart is a muscle that needs to be conditioned. We can do that with the rower. That's way more joint friendly than running. Like, especially if you're starting this thing out, you guys. Like, if you're inspired by what Mark's doing right now, and this is brand new to you, then we opened this podcast up with this can be tough on your joints. But when you have a stationary bike, or if you have an elliptical, or if you have a rower, or if you have a pool, these are all things that are so joint friendly that you can do to work all of the same systems that we're talking about. So cross training, I actually like to do it either for the purposes of recovery. So you're doing it at like a 3 out of 10. You're just on there, for lack of a better phrase, to get a flushing effect. You're getting loosened up. You're just feeling better from it, right? So you can run it that way. Or if you feel a little bit beat up, but you feel a little bit beat up from a joint perspective, but you actually feel okay systemically, then I would use cross training as a version or vehicle of tempo training. So if you want to use it as a recovery tool, that's great. But if you actually feel internally recovered, but your joints are a little beat up, use the tempo method for them, because I want you to still increase the specificity of your training with your actual time that you get running. And that's what's going to be our fartlek and our long and slow runs.
I was wondering about this. Like, for example, Andrew's doing a lot of grappling and he has friends that are getting ready for competitions too. And I've done some fartlek runs too. But an interesting thing I've found is that exactly what you're saying, going on like an Aerodyne bike and doing intervals, let's say 30 seconds at an 8 out of 10 or whatever, 8 or 9 out of 10 maybe, trying to keep everything nasal, and then rest periods of around 90 seconds, doing that 10 to 12 times, even though during that workout, I will get fatigued. Afterwards, I can come off of that and I'm not beat up I'm not nearly beat up so I can actually go and train the next day. So is something like using those types of tools something that could really be beneficial for grapplers or athletes who are trying to increase conditioning without building up too much joint fatigue?
Yeah, I think for sure. Like, nasal breathing is something that's really blown up on the scene in the past 3 to 5 years or so. It's got so many benefits to it that we're still continuing to learn about. Like, our nose actually filters the air. It helps us maintain glycogen and be more efficient with utilizing fat as a fuel source. It's keeping our body in a parasympathetic state for longer than it otherwise would have been, because mouth breathing is associated with activating that sympathetic state, which is very fatiguing over time. Nose breathing also helps keep our heart rate lower, and an increased heart rate is associated with exercise-induced fatigue. We've all felt that, and then you're going to be fatigued when that's happening. Nasal breathing stops or slows down all of that from taking place. So we're able to get a major benefit out of it. We're improving our ability to deliver and absorb oxygen because it's coming through a network where we need to be a lot more efficient with it. But I do actually like it for my combat sports athletes too, because it keeps them calmer. I think every athlete needs to be calmer, like a hockey player. If he can get to the bench in between shifts and nasal breathe and calm down, because nobody performs worse than an athlete who's not patient. When you're very sympathetic, you might actually be exploding in the octagon or in the ring or going for a submission that's not there. You weren't patient enough. You didn't get the right position. Or in hockey, you might give away a suicide pass. You're just giving away the puck. These are all very, very sympathetic things. So in combination to the physiological benefits of the nasal breathing, I also just like the psychological component of, I'm in control of this thing. I can actually bring back strategy and not act so erratically to this sympathetic response. And I think that thinking about it almost like you're getting on a horse is a cool tool to use. It's something that I learned from the crew over at XPT, and they actually taught me it when I was getting in the ice baths. I've done a lot of cold plunges with them, and the way in which they put it in my mind is like the ice is an absolute stressor, but it's a stressor that you're not going to be able to stop. You will get out of the ice bath if you panic. So the way in which you have to think about it is a horse is sprinting, and you have to see that horse coming and get on the horse and just control it and understand that it's going to be a crazy situation, but you're on it and you're getting control. You're on the horse until you can calm down. That would actually help me a ton in the ice bath, because the people who get out are the ones who panic. They don't understand that that's coming. They don't get on the horse at the right time. They don't meet their breath where it's ready to be met, and they end up panicking and getting out. And I think that happens a lot in sports in terms of patience.
Maddie Forberg.
This is how to not approach girls at the gym.
I hate this. I hate when there's days. It's me so uncomfortable. Feral, like fucking feral.
So he's looking.
The 5 as 5 pounds. These are the weights. Excuse me? You don't have to do that. It's okay. No, it's okay. I got it. Thank you, though. See what I mean? All right, here we go.
Have you seen that video before?
No.
Yeah, so she saw him like looking at her. He came over to help with some weights, and it seemed like it just really did bother her. A lot of people have been talking about that specific clip, and she actually ended up apologizing for it, but it doesn't seem like a normal response. You know what I mean? Like, it seems like she has maybe dealt with something before, and maybe she's taking his looks to mean more than what they actually are.
I don't like these videos where they just zoom in on the people around them, because they could be looking at anything. Now, if somebody's like squatting and they're right behind me, just like staring at my butt crack or something, that's a totally different story. I do think it's annoying, but not harassment, that he like put the weight on, because so many people have done that for me, where they're like, oh, let me grab that, and I'm like, I'm gonna add like 3 more plates on here, like, you know, I'm not incapable of doing this.
Yes.
And while I, you know, there's 2 sides of that, like, oh, they're just trying to help, but also like, I'm not this damsel in distress with this plate. That to me is like, it does seem kind of like she's being a bit dramatic, because he like glanced over there a couple of times. He could be looking at anything. It's not like he's, I don't know, being weird, in my opinion. I've seen a lot worse where people are like just straight up kind of like stalking, like prey kind of thing, where
circling.
Yeah, and that one seemed a bit mild to me. Not that it's ever appropriate to like stare at somebody, but that didn't look like that, in my opinion.
I would say, isn't this how we meet people? You know, like you're probably thinking as a guy, like you heard about how your dad met your mom or something, and you're like, here's my chance. Like, I should go figure out a way to get close to this girl to say hello or something.
And that's a tricky one, because people will ask me like, oh, how do I shoot my shot in the gym? And I always kind of want to be like, well, maybe the gym's not the place for that. But that's where I met my partner. Like, that's not fair for me to say, don't go and try and meet somebody at the gym. I would just be respectful. Like, if somebody seems like they're uncomfortable, or they don't want to talk to you, or they're in the middle of a set or something, now's not the time to talk. But if I'm going to like the water fountain or something, or like I'm waiting in between exercises, I feel like that's an appropriate time to come up to somebody if you're really trying to shoot your shot. But also, like, don't just totally disrupt somebody's training session.
For any ladies that are watching this, I'm actually curious what you do think about men approaching in the gym, because it is a social space. It's a social space where there's a common interest in whether it's getting jacked or getting healthier. Y'all have the same mindset, the men and women there. But how do you ladies feel about getting approached? Do you think it's, because I've seen comments of women saying, everyone's in the gym to work out, don't approach in the gym. But that just seems too, I mean, I met my girl in the gym, right?
Yeah.
You met your husband in a gym. It just seems like it's odd that that's just not the place.
I agree. And especially if you really prioritize training, you'd probably want to meet somebody who at least cares about it. So if you're somebody who's training a lot, you're probably not somebody who's going to the bars all the time, or going to clubs and like, you know, other places where you'd meet somebody.
Yeah.
So it's again like the time and the place. Should a guy come up to me while I'm in the middle of like a rep? Like, absolutely not. Or if I'm about to like set up or whatever, like, don't talk to me then. But in like the in between times, I feel like that's appropriate. And again, it's on me to be like, hey, look, I'm just not really interested. You know, like, it's really easy to say that. I know some women kind of feel like they need to like be nice about something, but I think more women need to be direct, be mean. Like, if you're not interested, tell that, like, don't entertain the conversation. Tell that guy, hey, listen, I'm not trying to meet somebody at the gym. I'm just trying to train. Like,
You're like,
nice to
I'm-
meet you, but
I'm not really interested. And you turn around, it's Chris Hemsworth. You're like, hold on a second. I meant like,
I mean,
is that
not
your celebrity
interested.
crush?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Was that your free pass?
Mm-hmm.
It's Chris Hemsworth for you, Michael B. Jordan for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I like it.
I like it.
Giancarlo Bodoni.
How much time does it take to like really see good progress in jiu-jitsu? We talking about like 3 times a week or?
Consistency is the most important thing. So at least as long as you're going, if you can only make it 3 times a week, that's what your life allows you. You're going to see results as long as you stay consistent 3 times a week. It's not like you're on for like, 6 weeks and then you're off for 3 weeks. Then obviously you're going to backtrack. But so consistency is the most important thing. More time on the mat is better overall. But it also depends on the individual because, somebody who, I teach beginners all the time. And so I get beginners that, have been training for 3 months, but the kid's 16 years old and he's played sports all his life. This kid gets good fast.
Yeah.
Whereas, I have, a 38-year-old dad who, sits all day on a 9 to 5 and he only gets to train 4 days a week. Even if the 16-year-old also trains 4 days a week, you're going to tend to see, for the most part, that the progression's a little faster. The younger that they are, they tend to respond quicker to movements. And I tend to relate that to, one, like how active they are and how active, the 30, they've been their whole life. But also, how many movements have you actually learned in your 16 years of life as opposed to your 38 years of life, and how much of that movement have you accommodated your body to? Has it your body just used to doing?
Mm-hmm. With your personal progress, and everyone should probably check out the documentary "Becoming Dangerous" that Flo made. It was fucking awesome.
Mm-hmm.
But Gordon, in a segment, he said that the 1 year that you guys trained together when you came and started training with Danaher, that he thinks you progressed more in that 1 year than your whole span of training. Do you know what he meant by that? And do you feel that like just because of that training setting, it just vastly improved your jiu-jitsu because you already had really good jiu-jitsu at that point?
Yeah, I've been training jiu-jitsu a long time. I think there's a couple of factors to that. There's one is that I was fully immersed in no-gi, whereas up until that point, I would say 80 to 90% of what I did was gi. So like when I started training jiu-jitsu, we only had one no-gi class a week in my academy. Gotcha. And the rest of the other days I was only training in the gi. And then in the last couple of years I've been trying to focus more on no-gi, competing more so when I was a black belt. I started to transition a little more to no-gi.
Mm-hmm. How many years do you think that's been?
So I've been a black belt for 2.5, 3 years, I think.
Okay.
I can't remember exactly when I feel like that should be like a date that I remember, but yeah, but so I feel like, the last couple of years, I think it might have been just because like the way that the sport was progressing, there was a lot more of this seemed like no-gi was just trending a lot more, and it just seemed like there was more opportunities in that area. And for whatever reason, even when I was training mostly gi, I would seemingly do a little bit better in no-gi tournaments. I don't know if I just put less pressure on myself. I was, training it less. So I was like, whatever, let's just see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
But for whatever reason, like even as a brown and early black belt, I like medaled or performed better at no-gi tournaments. And then once, there was like this big like uproar in no-gi, and ADCC was starting to get a lot of hype behind it. I put in my mind that I was going to do the trials, and that was what I was going to focus on.
Yeah.
And so at that time, I was training by myself. I was teaching in Massachusetts at Bernardo Faria School.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I would do was I would teach in the evenings, and I would get a small group of my students, and we would go upstairs. There was like an upstairs mat area, and I would take like 7 or 8 guys, and I would teach them, and then I would grapple with them. And that was like my training camp for, however many months prior to the trials. And then 3 weeks before the trials is when I finally actually like moved to Austin. So I was able to kind of like put the finishing touches on, tactics and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I was able to like win the trials. But in terms of like that year,
I think that because I had fully immersed myself into no-gi, I was learning a lot of new skills and a lot of holes in my game that I had because I hadn't come from that no-gi background. Even though I trained no-gi here and there, it wasn't like, you know, once you're fully immersed in it, you do realize that they are different sports. It's like wrestling and judo, you know? So there is a tons of similarities to them. It's still jiu-jitsu at the end of the day. It's another facet of jiu-jitsu, but like a lot of like the things that you can do in the gi in terms of takedowns, in terms of, you know, submissions, like the whole leg lock game changes everything. The whole wrestling aspect. There's submissions that you just can't do in no gi that you can do in gi. So you have to specialize in certain, you know, moves, things like that. Friction versus less friction, sweat. There's so many different things that change the way that you approach the game that I was really able to hone in on like that specific facet of my jiu-jitsu, which made me go from a good no-gi submission grappler to like a great no-gi submission grappler, where I was able to really just like fill in all those gaps and just round out my game. And I'm still, you know, there's still a bunch of different skills that I personally want to improve upon.
Yeah.
And that I still feel that I'm not as good at, you know, that I can be. And so, yeah, that's kind of what I think, you know, played a factor. And also, you know, I was a student full time. I was just a full-time student. Like I was showing up to class every day. I wasn't teaching. I was just taking classes from, you know, the best coach that you could ask for. So, you know, it's all those pieces of the puzzle make it relevant.
Did the black belt not matter to you that much? Is that partly why you don't remember? And did you also go to practice like the next day, the day after you may have gotten your belt?
Yeah. So for whatever, I spent like quite a while at my purple belt because I was moving. So I moved from my home gym to a different state, and I had moved around for like about 2 years to a couple different places. And so I never got belted at purple belt. And that was kind of the beginning of where I started to decide that I wanted to be a full-time competitor, even with like everybody's goal is like, okay, I want to be a world champion, but like, what does that really mean? You know, like what does that entail? And I was still figuring that out, but I knew I wanted to be, you know, I wanted to pursue jiu-jitsu competitively at that point. And so, trained at a couple different places. And then I ultimately ended up in, you know, in North Carolina, that's where I ended up getting my black belt under Lucas Lepre. And for whatever reason, when I was, you know, coming up through the ranks, like a black belt was very important to me. I was like, okay, I'm going to get my black belt. Like that was important to me. And as time went on and I spent like a few years like not getting belted, I just stopped worrying about like the belt that's like on my waist. I just felt like it was irrelevant. And the only reason why at that point in my, like when I was a competitor or when I was, you know, starting to pursue competitive jiu-jitsu, that the belt was important to me was because I wanted to compete at a black belt level against the guys that I was watching, you know? So that was the only reason.
Like entry into going against the very best.
Correct. Yeah, exactly. So I would watch, you know, a world championship or an ADCC. ADCC doesn't have belts, but like worlds at the time when I was, you know, training in the gi, you know, and I would see those guys and I'm like, okay, one day I'm going to compete, you know, on that level with those guys. And, but really like the skill, the belt is not, you know, a good marker for where your skills are at. And so for me now and in that time, I started to drift less towards the belt and more towards how good am I actually. And so that's why I think like when I got my black belt, it was a little bit more cold than any of the other belts. Like every other belt, I was like, yeah, I got my belt. Like that means like something, but you're no different than you were 5 seconds before you got the belt. Like, so that's kind of like how I started to approach it, and I try to like emphasize that to my students that yes, you are going to get belted at some point, but that shouldn't be your goal. Your goal should be your own personal development.
Yeah. You mentioned watching a lot of athletes, like the guys that you wanted to compete against. How did you make that transition into becoming that person? Because that was another big part of that documentary, that your belief in yourself as an athlete, knowing that you had those skills to compete against those people. When do you think you started to recognize that you are also at that level and you can compete at that level? And these guys that you may have been watching for years, they're not your idols anymore. They're your competition.
Yeah. I think when I started competing as a black belt, my first ever black belt tournament was Pan Am's. That was when I had my first match against Hulk, and we started kind of that rivalry.
Yeah.
And I would compete against. I mean, and this is kind of like the story throughout a lot of my career, but particularly at black belt, like I would compete against guys that were, good or had been black belts for a while, or Hulk at that time had already won worlds and done all these things, and like I always had these like narrow matches, and I was like, every time I would walk off the mat, I'd be like, okay, I lost that match by like 2 points. Nothing. He didn't really do anything to me, and I would always question myself, and I'd be like, man, if I would have just like opened up more and like tried something, like he wouldn't have been able to, like I would have been able to win that match. So I always felt like it was on me. It wasn't on the other guy. And so that started to shift the way that I trained and the way that I, approached, training and competing.
How?
I would just make so previously I started to think about, like, I would go into tournaments with the intention of just winning. Like I was okay, I need to go out there and I need to win. I need to come home with a gold medal. But what happens from the first second that you step on the mat and to the gold medal, there's a whole lot that happens in between. And so what I started to realize, and my coach, who at the time who gave me my brown and black belt, Lucas Lepre, he helped me understand this. And John also helped me understand this as well, which was what matters isn't winning. Winning's just a byproduct of how you perform. And so if your focus is, everything's about what you focus on. So if you're focused on winning, and more specifically, if you're focused on not losing, that's another thing that's important is like I was worried about losing to a guy. And then I was okay, let me think about winning, but it shouldn't be the result that you're focused on or that you're focused on. You should focus on the performance. And if you perform well and you perform the way that you know that you can, and that you train for and the way that you do every day in the gym, then the result will almost certainly be a byproduct of that performance. And that's kind of like how I started to shift my focus in tournaments. And it's always going to be a battle. Your mind is never your friend, especially in moments like that. And so for me, I just try to put my focus on the things that I do every single day in the gym and just try to replicate those things in the tournament, independent of the stage that I'm on or who I'm competing against or whatever it is. Like I ultimately, the most important thing is that I perform.
Power Project family, your normal shoes are making you weak. This is why you partner with Vivo Barefoot shoes, because they have a wide toe box, they're flat, and they're flexible. So with every single step you're taking, if you're taking a 10-minute walk outside or when you're working out in the gym, your feet are able to do what they're supposed to do in this shoe. They have tons of options for hiking, running, training in the gym, chilling and relaxing, casual shoes for if you're out on a date. You need to check them out. And Andrew, how can they get it?
Yes, that's over at vivobarefoot.com/powerproject, and you guys will receive 15% off your order automatically. Again, vivobarefoot.com/powerproject. Links to them down in the description as well as the podcast show notes.
Nick Rodriguez, aka Nicky Rod.
Do you do any outside conditioning for jiu-jitsu, or do you just train more jiu-jitsu and train harder?
I mean, yeah, definitely the best cardio for grappling is doing the jiu-jitsu. But I'll do things, like I was telling you guys earlier, I'm a fan of the EMOMs in CrossFit. So things like that definitely boost your cardio. But I'm a fan of just working different things. So like whatever I don't use on the mat, I'll do like kind of in the gym, So like if I'm not, like maybe I use a lot of legs in practice, I'll do leg workouts, or like one of my favorite EMOMs is I'll do like 5 barbell rows, power cleans, squats, and I'll toss like something else in there to make like 20 reps. I'll do like a 10-minute EMOM of that. So like that's pretty good cardio, and muscular endurance and whatnot. So I'm a fan of stuff like that.
Cool. How's it been now too, like owning your own gym? I don't know how long has B Team Jiu-Jitsu been a thing?
So it's gonna be 2 years in the summer, and yeah, it's fun. I mean, we get to make our own schedule. Pretty much all of our students are, they're our friends, and it's a good time. Our gym is full of people that just want to get better and they train consistently. Like most of my people in my gym train once a day, and a lot of them train twice a day. So we have a few different sessions. We have 8 a.m., 12 p.m. and 7 p.m. The 12 p.m. is typically the comp class, and all the classes are like, more hobbyist.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have a lot of people that compete, and our guys are good. And our goal specifically with the B team initially was to just create practice partners that were giving us problems in practice. So we have tough roles, and now we have a year or so and some change before the next ADCC, so we can help develop our guys to make it even harder come ADCC time.
What spurred the name B Team Jiu-Jitsu?
Well, that's Craig Jones. He's a meme artist when it comes to taking second place, right? He's took in second place in all of the world-class competitions. So he's like, all right, let's just instead of calling ourselves the best, because everybody says they're the best or tries to be, he's like, all right, let's just be the second best. That way nobody can cop us, so so we kind of memed it, and it hurts my feelings a little bit, but I get it, I like it, I support it.
Yeah,
I'd rather be A team or for me B team is best, B's for best, better, something like that. Yeah,
makes sense.
What do you think you have to do, because you're right there with some of the best in the world? What do you think you have to do to be clear cut the best in the world?
Yeah, I think once I beat Gordon, I'll be considered the best pound for pound. I think right now I am the best pound for pound, especially if you're talking like not using any fucking like bodily enhancements. Like I'm by far the pound for pound best. I mean, if you take because some of the guys that do steroids in the sport, they literally couldn't compete at all if they weren't.
You think so?
I know so, because you're taking guys that are like naturally 175, 180 pounds, and then in 9 months they're 230 pounds. It's fucking insane. And it's like it takes a super long time to build up that muscle.
I'm not on anything.
Like, and you can do that, but it's harder doing it when you're building that muscle when you're doing an hour plus cardio every day, and it just takes much longer. So I'm very confident that a lot of these guys couldn't compete if they were natty. So I call myself the Natty King.
Yeah, you can't beat them, join them, right? Maybe you should consider.
Yeah. I mean, I don't like I hear too much about the side effects, and you know what? The real thing is I don't know enough, right? I would have to use some brain energy to do a ton of research before I ever considered it, and I'm doing great now. I mean, the best guys, Gordon Ryan currently, and I just broke his foot, so we're getting closer every time.
Yeah. This is something that's actually kind of interesting, because like you are natural, you haven't taken anything. You are one of the bigger grapplers in the game though. And I wonder, it's not that you need more muscle necessarily, but one thing that, could probably help somebody who trains as much as you is something that can help with your recovery. Not necessarily something that packs on more size, because you don't necessarily need more size.
But every workout's like 2 or 3% better because you're a little bit more recovered or something.
And my curiosity is again, because in no-gi jiu-jitsu they don't care, would you be open to finding something that could help with your athletic recovery, or is it just like the principle of staying without any type of enhancement?
Above everything, right, what makes me better than all these guys is that I am super consistent every day with my meals, with my sleep, with my daylight exposure, and with my training, right?
Yeah.
I think those things are super important, and that's why I say, because a lot of these guys don't do the right thing, but they do gear, so it kind of makes up for the 5 hours of sleep a night, the only getting half your meals in, shit like that. So for me, recovery is nutrition, sleep, and keep training, right? Even if you have injuries, train around the injury, try not to create bad habits, but maybe do some rounds where it's not taxing that specific point of your body. So training every day, but being consistent in the diet and the sleep.
Gotcha. I agree with you. Staying ahead of it and continuing to move is pivotal. Have you ever found that some days it's just dumb and it doesn't make any sense? Have you been at practice where you're like, I'm in on this everyday thing, but today's a rough go of it?
I mean, I definitely have days where are not as good, not like my peak days. Personally, my peak days are every day is pretty fucking great, but my best days are Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, usually my best training sessions. For whatever reason, my whole life of training, it's always been those are my days I do best. And come competition, I have the ability to peak later on in the week. So, come the weekend, I can compete. What was your question specifically?
Just some days going and just, I don't know, you have an injury or you're sick and you're like, this fucking, it would be actually nice if I just broke the streak and
Feeling
didn't
like a little bitch.
Yeah, didn't come today.
Yeah, I mean, I'll take a day off like occasionally. Like maybe I've done my Monday, Wednesday, Friday train twice, and then every other day just train once, and I've done that for like a few months. And I need a Sunday to take a rest day. Like sometimes I'll do that, but I find when I take that rest day on Sunday, it's a bit harder to get going on Monday. I'm like, fuck, it's so easy to just not go to practice. Like it's very comfortable to just sit at home and chill. But I enjoy practice. Honestly, I look forward to going to it, especially if I know I got a visitor coming in or someone because I'm in an interesting spot where like B team is a travel destination. So at any time we got 40 guys from around the world, different countries coming in to not only learn, but to try to test us. Like every day I have somebody from a different country or somebody that's pretty high level trying to submit me. So I have to be sharp every single day.
Sandra Khan.
So this is actually interesting. I think probably people that are listening can kind of start thinking, if you are just walking around or you're chilling or you're listening to the podcast and your tongue is at the bottom of your mouth, that's not necessarily the proper oral resting posture you're supposed to have, correct?
Yes. This is something anybody listening could do, which is put your teeth together and then swallow. We call it the invisible swallow. Then that means that you swallow without making any faces. And you can do it if you're driving, you're not going to look in the mirror. But if you're at home, just look in the mirror, put your teeth lightly together, and then swallow, thinking about putting the back of your tongue up. And then hold that. After you swallow, usually we tell the protocol is to swallow 3 times really hard. And then you feel kind of all the tissues glued together. And we say they consolidate in front of the roof of the mouth. So that opens your airway. And you can teach yourself to hold that. It's hard to hold it if you don't have enough room. And most of us don't have enough room. If you have enough room, you can teach yourself and it will just naturally go park itself up there. But most of us don't have enough room. So we have to use something to help us recognize it and hold it at night, like our lip lockers that you can use, or, like you guys are talking about tape, that can be an adjunct that can help you while you learn that position.
And this is the lip locker.
Yes.
What's the negative impact of this? Like, what have you seen? Like, what's the epidemic?
Well, the epidemic, we have enough research on the fact that if you are not breathing well, and you're not resting well, you're not recovering well, you will have side effects that can be, they can go anywhere from just being tired to being, having your cells being under stress. And stress is a cause of so many diseases, especially what we call Western diseases, So if you have, a predisposition for disease and your cells are not protecting you, then you're going to get to have that disease earlier in life. And, we can't really say if you don't have a good jaw, you will develop, Alzheimer's. That's not a result that can be,
It's not scientific, yeah.
Yeah, but we know that there's the resting mode and then there's the active mode. We have the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. And we've done work in Stanford with Dr. Sapolsky, who's expert in stress. And he basically knows that the more stress, the more you're going to break down your cells. So we want to be in parasympathetic, which is the rest and repair mode, as opposed to in the sympathetic, which is the fight and flight. Fight and flight is useful, but it should be very short and we should get out of it. But as humans, we're carrying on this stress because we're always thinking we're being, in danger. That's what stress is. So our cells are vulnerable. If we are in parasympathetic mode, our cells are not vulnerable. So we want to be as long as possible in this parasympathetic rest and repair, digest. These are the longer times. So when we're asleep, we want to be only in parasympathetic. If our mouth is open and we're struggling to breathe, or if we have sleep apnea, we are going to be the same as if, a tiger was attacking us in the middle of the night. So we're going to put all our energy into fighting that stress, and we're going to leave ourselves vulnerable to disease. So these are all theories that we're looking into, but definitely having good sleep, good rest, good breathing will make us healthier. And the other thing is we look better. The health, this is something that's in JAWS, our appearance chapter. If you look better, you're probably going to be healthier because we are designed to be attracted to the mates that are going to have the best possibility to have healthier offsprings. So a nice jaw will look good because it's a healthy jaw, not because we just want to, we think it's an opinion that we look better. We're going to be healthier if we have wider jaws with the possibility to breathe better.
Good. Yep. I was just going to add to that. There's such huge problems with people's sleep, and when it comes to nutrition, when it comes to exercise, people can overdo their food. They can underdo their exercise. People can overdo their exercise, right? You can kind of have this wide variety of things. And what I usually say is, as long as it doesn't negatively impact your sleep, as far as maybe somebody is trying to diet for a bodybuilding show. But once they get down to those last couple of weeks, that better just be a temporary position that you're in because it's going to be very difficult to sleep as you get leaner and more calorie deprived. On the other end of it, you have people that are eating probably too much food before they go to bed. Maybe they traditionally overeat and they're heavy and they're having a hard time going to sleep simply because they may have like sleep apnea, which I would imagine would be related to your body weight, but maybe it's more related to some of the airways. But that's one of the main reasons why we're talking to you today is because so much of this has to do with the way that we breathe. And for people to, sometimes people hear these kind of rabbit holes that we go down and they think it's outrageous or crazy, but I don't think it's crazy or outrageous for us to try to examine how can we breathe better.
Breathing is definitely the one action that is most important. Of everything that we do, breathing is most important. And there's something my ENT was talking about it when we were writing the new book, Nose. He says breathing is the only function that has two organs that we can use for the same. Like we have organs we have two organs doing one thing, like two eyes, two ears. But we only have one function that has two organs. So you can breathe through your nose and your mouth because breathing is so important. And we have to make sure that we optimize the breathing based on whatever we want to achieve. So breathing is not, okay, breathe through your nose all the time. No. As humans, we can breathe through our mouth, and that has helped us be the dominant animal in the planet. We can cool ourselves off. We can breathe through our mouth. If we have an accident with our nose, we can compensate and breathe through our mouth. And we can have that extra air when we need to get away from danger. So breathing through our mouth is not bad. But we have to determine what are we breathing for. And when you're, in athletics, and, that's not necessarily my field, nutrition and bodybuilding and lifting weights and all that, but I am involved in trying to get every sport has different demands of oxygen. You're not going to breathe the same if you're a swimmer that if you're a boxer. A boxer has a device in their mouth, so they cannot mouth breathe when they're doing their sport. And then they stop and they have to recover really fast and they have to get back into the sport. Whereas a swimmer will swim and then they're done. And they mouth breathe. So it's adequate for a swimmer to mouth breathe. And it's fantastic that we can do it because we can go into the pool and swim. A lot of animals cannot. They cannot put their head in the water or whatever. So we have to decide what the function is, and then we actually have different types of breathing. We have mixed breathing, we have nasal breathing, we have mouth breathing, we have different positions that we can keep our jaw depending on what we're trying to do. And in that sense, you want to guide people to breathe the most efficient way for what they're doing, and then try to get as fast as possible into your recovery breathing. Recovery breathing, we call it up-block breathing because that's the breathing where you have a little bubble of space, not air, but space in the roof of the mouth, and that bubble actually holds the tongue away from the airway. So that we call it uplog, like a plane that's flying. The uplog is the wheels that go up, but they stay up without active energy. So you want your athlete or the person to go back into that mode as soon as possible, because that's when we regenerate better. And we should spend more time in that position. And that's when, we are looking at athletes and we're trying to do studies to see if their pulse goes back faster to the resting pulse when they're in this position, if their lactic acid is, being used more efficiently when they're in this position. So we got to bring the athlete back into recovery, because that's the key. And I know you guys are, you get neurologists in your show too, and we talk about recovery, and you want to regenerate your cells and you want to have protection from disease. So going to that mode of recovery faster is better. And I like to talk about the extremes because that gives us a clear picture of where we're at. And if we look at the extreme in life, when people are dying, they usually have a mouth open. If you go to, a hospice situation, you will see that people are struggling to get air, and they open their mouth to get more volume because the respiration in the cell is inefficient. The wall is not allowing the oxygen to go in, so we want more volume, and that's why we open the mouth. When in the other extreme, newborns should only breathe through their nose. They can't even breathe through their mouth. A baby cannot breathe through their mouth, a newborn. So those are the two extremes. We know the baby, everything's new, right? Like you get a new car, everything functions well, everything is, great. And that's the baby. Its parts are new. So we're breathing through our nose. When everything is falling apart, we're breathing through our mouth. So what do we want in the middle? To try to stay in the nasal recovery breathing as much as possible, because that's when we are going to, have things work better. And if our cell is efficient and the respiration inside the cell is happening properly, then we don't need a lot of volume. When we need that volume is when, when we're not getting what we need. Our mitochondria are not getting the energy that they need to function inside the cell because the lungs might not be getting enough air. And that can be because our nose is inefficient or because our jaw is too small, and we have things that are, in the path of that air, and we have to get more volume because we're not getting that efficiency. So in that sense, for athletes that are working on different programs that you advise, you need to figure out what they're doing and then make sure the recovery is the best possible recovery. Sleep, obviously, is important. If they're doing something short term, it's fine. But for the long term health maintenance, you want them to have good sleep. And without good breathing, there's no possibility of good recovery and good sleep.
Is it possible, because we've had a few people that have come onto the show, and we've asked them about snoring, and some of them have said, snoring's not a big deal, but is it possible to be able to breathe through your mouth at night and not have it be a problem for your health, or is that a problem that you need to figure out?
Look, we have a tendency to compensate. And everything, not only humans, every being in the planet can compensate. And the question is who can compensate better, and when do you get to the breakdown? If you are snoring a little bit, but you are getting good sleep, your stress is low, you have good body mass index, and there's other things that are good, then snoring might not be a huge problem. If you start gaining weight and you have a very stressful life and you live in a polluted place and you add more things, then you won't be able to compensate. So every individual is different, but the need for oxygen and for nose breathing is the same for everyone. But some of us can compensate better than others, and we can try to thrive. I love the wellness community, because the wellness community is not necessarily a sick community. It's actually healthy, but they want to make sure they continue to be healthy And, some comedians say, they're greedy because they're already healthy, but they want more, right? And yeah, we are greedy. I consider myself healthy, but I don't want to be sick. My ex-husband always says, if Sandra is in pain, the whole world is in pain. So we got to make sure that she's not suffering. So I don't like to be in pain. I don't like to suffer. I like to be healthy. I don't want to have, things that don't work well in my body. That's why I do the work it takes. And in any case, we want to be well. We want to make sure we focus on the things that can help anybody be better.
Basically, how many times to eat is a question of, how do I control my hunger? How do you control your hunger? How do you control your cravings? Why do people stop their diet? They stop their diet because they're probably hungry, and they stop their diet because of cravings. Those are two things that are like distinctly different. Being hungry might be that you're just kind of like underfed. You might be pretty satisfied from the foods that you're eating, but you're just not eating quite enough. The things that can happen from not eating quite enough are very, very detrimental. Like they're disastrous. They're more disastrous than we can even really measure or see a lot of times. A lot of times when someone gets to be in a caloric deficit, if it's for a little while, or they're simply just not used to it, they're going to notice some fatigue. Their workouts aren't going to be good. For some people that we know, their workout is kind of everything. Their workout is like the most important part of the day. You know this with jiu-jitsu. There's some guys that they live for those hour or 2 hour sessions on the mats. Like that's like their day. They fucking love that. Well, if I give somebody, a jiu-jitsu guy, a diet, and they start performing bad, they're not gonna last very long doing the diet, because they're gonna be like, man, as soon as they start to have bad workouts, well, these workouts mean so much to me. I don't want to have shit workouts. And that's where you start to get in like a lot of conversation where you're like, okay, we got to talk about this a lot more. Okay. You need to not count your calories for a while. You need to eat every time you're hungry. Go full blast, go full bore with these whole foods. Do that for 2 or 3 weeks, and then let's kind of see where you're at. No one wants to do that because it kind of takes, too long. But again, how easy is it to be better than you were 3 years ago versus than you were yesterday? So if we're like, listen, I got to inform you of something. If you want to be good at jiu-jitsu, we have to talk about the next couple of years. If you want to look like anything, because you're starting at a gym for the first time, you're starting your fitness journey. Well, if you're starting your fitness journey, I got news for you. It's going to take you 2 or 3 or probably maybe about 5 years before other people start to recognize that you lift regularly. That's a long time. So maybe the news is sad, but maybe the news is good. The good side is we don't have to really try to go fast, because we're going to be way better off 3 years from now, almost regardless of what we do. If we're just consistent and we just put in some work, even if the work is at a 6 out of 10 intensity, even if you go in there and just kind of bro out and you don't really push, you don't get grunty and you don't get all crazy, you're still going to make insane progress, especially if you never lifted before. So these are the things to kind of keep in mind. When you go on a diet, there really isn't a diet. It's a lifestyle forever, especially if you are fat. If you are fat, there's no way out. There's not an end to it, because once you lose the body fat, then you have to maintain that weight loss. And we know here in the United States, there's been study after study. There's been tons of research done showing how many people have lost 40 pounds, 50 pounds, even 70 pounds only to gain it right back. So we don't really have a weight loss issue here in the United States. That's not necessarily even a lack of willpower, because they did do it. They showed that they could do it, but then it was hard to maintain because people have the wrong idea about nutrition and probably about fitness.
Yeah, and that is tough when you explain to somebody like, because I want to do this 30-day challenge, I want to do this work thing, whatever it may be, but you're just like, no, this is just what you do now. It took me a long time to really, like, I was already doing it, but to understand what it even meant to say, like, this is a lifestyle, I thought it was just something you can kind of adopt for a little bit. As silly as that sounds, is now that I understand, but so you're right. It sucks because it's like, wait, I got to do this forever. Like,
well, do I look the same as when I competed in bodybuilding? Does Nsima look the same when he competed in bodybuilding? And do you look the same as when you did your photo shoot? Like, none of us are that lean. We're not going to stay that lean. Those are like more extreme examples, but you get the idea. Like, it doesn't matter how skilled you are at this. We're all skilled. We all understand what to do. But to try to hold on to that takes a lot more work. And it's not like we abandoned our diets. We actually just switched our diet to be a little looser because we made a compromise. And that's what people will have to figure out for themselves. They'll have to figure out, what do I want my lifestyle to look like? Like, am I going to be the person that carries around the Tupperware and carries around the gallon of water? Am I going to have Tupperware, at a wedding? Am I going to, only eat from or only drink from glass, things that have, things that are in glass rather than plastics? Am I, you can take this as far as you want. It's kind of up to you. You're allowed to make that up yourself, and you're allowed to make room. What if you're 21 and you want to have drinks on the weekend and stuff? Do you have to completely stop that stuff? I don't think so. You might have to reevaluate how you go about doing that. And you might have to be thoughtful, which could be hard to do when you're super young. But you might have to think, why do I like to go drink with my friends? Well, I kind of like getting a buzz. And I like to get like a little bit drunk. But I don't love not being able to go to the gym the next morning. And I don't like this about it. I don't like that about it. When you start to kind of add that up, you're like, okay, well, maybe I can drink something that gets me to a buzz, but doesn't get me too far beyond that. There are ways to handle it. There's ways to do it.
Yeah, I actually did have a question about alcohol, but what I was getting at about like understanding that this is the long game is looking at it now, believe that it relieves a lot of pressure because it's no longer the sprint of the 30-day challenge. It's like, well, shit, in 30 days, as long as I don't gain weight, then we're doing good, and understanding that, like, yeah, in 5 years is when maybe somebody else will notice. So like you said, we don't have to sprint. But it was funny, it actually happened this morning. One of the younger guys at jiu-jitsu, he just got back from a bachelor party. It was like one of those like long, like week-long ones. I'm like, oof. So he told somebody else, he was just like, dude, if I might just tap and go throw up. And then so as we started like talking, and everybody had the same idea, which was like, man, it's not even worth it anymore. So I was going to ask you about alcohol, but since we're already in it, I believe that once you do start developing a lot of these habits, the alcohol stuff will kind of settle itself. And if that makes sense, then like you can kind of keep going on that unless you have other like tactics and stuff when it comes to alcohol, because that usually comes up, right? Somebody asks about diet, like, oh, but what about alcohol?
Yeah, usually a lot of good habits that you have over time, and you keep filling your plate up with that. A lot of times those things will dissipate. They might not completely disappear, but you'll get yourself to a point, and it may take a while, to where doing the practice of the thing feels so much better than not doing it. When you don't do it, sometimes at first when you don't do something that you want to do or that you're supposed to do, sometimes you feel bad and you feel like shame, and you're like, everyone knows I didn't show up, and like then you kind of just frustrated with yourself. But as time goes on, you don't really get that same way anymore, but you still are breaking yourself up out of a pattern. That is really important. And you can't lie to yourself. The human body keeps score, it keeps track. And so I think one of the more important things here is to continually, like, let's not even really talk a ton about let's not even talk a ton about the negative. Let's just try to focus in on what are the things that we can do positively, because the things that we're going to do positively are going to be the things that are going to move us forward. I shouldn't really have to give you a speech about alcohol and how it's not really helpful towards your goals. I think that most people probably, they should recognize that, and they should know that, especially if they've been listening to this podcast for a while. I also shouldn't have to give you a speech that if you want to be a world champion in anything, if you want to be a world champion in something like jiu-jitsu, maybe only eating pizza is not going to be a great way to get there, especially if you feel like you're not super talented and things like that. You may have to push into it with every single thing that you have.
If you enjoyed this episode, which I know you did because you got this far, then click this one right here because you'll enjoy this one just as much. And if you're choosing to still listen to me currently as I'm telling you to go over here and watch this video, well, hey, that just means you like the sound of my voice. And, well, I'll just keep seducing you right here.